The body of a warrior, calluses from the sword, a stranger's lion crest on his finger. But the one who just woke up in this body isn't a warrior. It's a rescuer who spent 7 years pulling people from the rubble after hurricanes and earthquakes. The warrior lost his last battle and burned his city to the ground, and the rescuer has just opened his eyes amidst 230 dying people and is already calculating in his head how much water is left. The cold hits him first, a stone floor beneath his cheek, a taste of iron on his tongue. A child is crying nearby. That's how they cry when they no longer expect anyone to come. He throws his eyes open and sees a charred beam overhead. The beam is black on the underside, so the fire spread across the floor. So this is a basement. So the basement survived. He sits up and his body explodes with pain in every joint. His right shoulder burns as if it had been ripped from its socket and shoved back in with clumsy hands. His brain spits out information in bursts. I am Daniel Kahn, 32 years old. I fell asleep at the wheel in Oregon. The car went off a cliff. I'm dead. Or maybe not. The child is still crying, so there are survivors. He forces himself to stand up and almost falls. His body is heavy. His muscles are dense but exhausted to the limit. This is the body of a warrior, not a manager. But the warrior has lost, and the manager has just woken up. The basement stretches for dozens of meters. People are lying along the walls. Dozens of people. Some are sleeping. Some are staring blankly at the ceiling. Some are holding children close and rocking back and forth. The air is thick with smoke, then blood, then urine. No one has set up a latrine. No one has separated the sick from the healthy. No one has counted the supplies. These people have simply hidden and are waiting for anything. Death, salvation, a miracle. He walks through the entire basement and counts the heads. 230 people, 40 children, 30 seriously wounded. By the far wall, an old man in a dirty doublet weeps over empty sacks and whispers that the grain has burned, and in a week, everyone will die. Daniel puts a hand on his shoulder, sits him back down, turns to the sacks. 30 of them by the wall. The top of each is black, with a charred crust. And this is where it gets interesting. He knows what this means. Grain in a thick fabric burns only on the outside. The fire travels along the surface and doesn't have time to penetrate the thickness if the sack is packed tightly. He grabs a knife and slashes open the first one. The crust is 2 fingers thick. Beneath it is dry golden wheat, unscathed. He slashes the second one. Same thing. The third. The fourth. The old man stops crying and looks at the grain as if it were gold. And Daniel is already counting. 30 sacks. 130 kilograms of pure grain in each. 4 tons. 230 mouths to feed. Half a kilo of flour per person per day. That's a month. A month is a lifetime if you know what to do with it. The old man's name is Olwin, quartermaster of House Everest. 30 years of service. His hands are shaking, his eyes are red, but his mind is sharp. Daniel bombards him with questions. Water. Olwin talks about a deep stone well beneath the fortress, where the fire didn't reach. Exits. The main one is blocked, but there's a side passage through the old storeroom. Tools. Axes, shovels, ropes, carpentry sets, nails, blacksmithing tools. Daniel listens, and a table forms in his mind. Resources on the left, needs on the right, shortages in red. He asks to gather everyone who can walk. Olwin looks puzzled. My Lord Adrian never spoke like that. My lord gave orders with his sword, not with words. He knew the names of the knights, not the names of the bags. But the old man stands up and goes, because there is something in this man's voice that wasn't there before. The calm confidence of someone who knows exactly what to do next. An hour later, 86 people are standing by the side exit. Daniel steps out first and sees the city, or rather, what used to be the city. Serentain lies in ruins. The walls of the houses still stand, but the roofs are gone. The streets are littered with ash. The main tower juts out like a charred tooth. He looks beyond the walls. The fields had burned, but grass is already sprouting. The earth is alive. The forest to the north is intact. The river to the east glistens. Water, forest, stone, earth. 4 resources. Anything can be built from them if you have hands and a plan. He has hands. He'll have a plan in an hour. He turns to the people. 86 pairs of eyes. Fear, hunger, hope, suspicion. He gives orders in an even voice, without shouting, without grandstanding. 10 people to survey the city, 10 to the well, 10 to sort the grain, the rest to the basement. No one goes beyond the walls. No one takes anything without permission. Everyone will get water and food before sunset. People listen. Some nod. Some don't understand but follow those who nod. In the first days after the disaster, people follow anyone who speaks with confidence. The city patrol takes 3 hours. Adrian's body refuses to move any faster. His shoulder flares with pain with every step. The smell of smoke wheezes in his chest. The northern wall is 70% intact. The western wall has collapsed. Of the 120 houses, 47 remain standing. 12 are livable. The mill is destroyed, but the granite millstones are intact. They don't burn. The smithy has no roof, but the forge and anvil have survived. The well works. The water tastes clean, but he doesn't trust the taste. Boil it. No other option. He saw how in Louisiana, after the hurricane, people drank from wells, and a week later, half the camp was down with dysentery. He returns to the basement, sits down on a rock, and closes his eyes for a minute. His body demands sleep. His brain demands action. The brain wins. He dictates to Olwin, and Olwin listens with his mouth agape. 10 brigades, water, food, medicine, construction, perimeter, children and the wounded, reserve. Each has a leader. The leader reports to Olwin, Olwin to him. The old man writes everything in charcoal on charred planks. By evening on the first day, 230 people eat hot porridge for the first time in 3 days. The grain was ground by hand with stones. It's slow and inefficient, but it works. Water was boiled in the surviving cauldrons. Daniel stands at the exit and watches as people eat, in silence. Some weep over their bowls, not from grief, but from relief. A man in torn chainmail stops nearby, a scar across his eyebrow, hard eyes. Captain Serge Morvan, the only surviving officer of the garrison. He stares for a long time. Then he remarks that Lord Adrian has changed. He didn't used to count sacks. He didn't know the word brigade. He didn't stand by the cauldrons like a cook. There is no question in his voice, only a statement, and behind it, suspicion. Daniel replies calmly. Battle changes people. You lose everything and either break or start thinking differently. Serge is silent. He doesn't believe it. But he saw how people got their porridge, how the brigades earned their pay in a single day, how the old man stopped crying and started writing. Serge doesn't believe it, but for now he doesn't interfere. At night, Daniel lies on the rocks, unable to sleep. Every muscle aches. His shoulder throbs with heat. He goes over the day's haul. 230 people, 4 tons of grain, a well, 47 standing houses, whole millstones, a whole forge, a river, a forest, stone. Not the worst starting kit. He's seen worse. In Japan, after the tsunami, they started with 300 people on bare concrete without a single sack of flour. And a month later, there was a tent city with running water and a kitchen serving 1,000 meals. Here, more is possible. Here, there are walls, foundations, basements, a river for a mill, and a forest for building. There's only one thing missing. Time. He doesn't know this world, doesn't know who Caldrake is, doesn't know why the city was burned, doesn't know who this Adrian is, or whose body he woke up in. But he knows the main thing. When 230 people are depending on you, figuring out who you are can come later. First, water. then food, then walls, then questions. He closes his eyes. Tomorrow will be longer. He's used to it. The third day without sleep in Oregon was longer, though back then it killed him. The thought doesn't scare him. It even amuses him. He falls asleep with a crooked smile on a stranger's face. On the second day, Daniel wakes up to a scream. A woman is screaming, sharply, angrily. He gets up from the stone floor and walks toward the sound. At the entrance to the cellar stands a young woman in a scorched dress. Her left hand is in a glove. Her right is clenched into a fist. Her hair is dark, dirty, tangled. Her eyes are like coals. She's yelling at Alvin. She says Lord Adrian is handing out grain like charity. She says that instead of gathering a squad and going after those who did this, he's cooking porridge. She says her sister is dead, that the knights are dead, that House Everest is on its knees, and that the only thing the head of the house should do is take up a sword and repay the debt with blood. Alvin backs away. He doesn't know what to say to her. Daniel stops 5 paces away and looks at her. This is Lyraine Everest, his wife's younger sister. Or rather, Adrian's wife, a woman he has never seen and who may be dead. Lyraine turns to him. There is hatred in her eyes. Not toward him personally, toward what he is doing, toward the fact that he is not doing what she believes he should. She tells him to his face that he is a coward, that the real Adrian would have taken up a sword, that the real Adrian wouldn't be counting sacks. Daniel is silent. He waits for her to finish. It's important. He knows from experience that you shouldn't interrupt people who are grieving. They need to get it off their chest. They need to let the pain out. Only then are they able to listen. Lyraine falls silent. She's breathing heavily, waiting for a response. He tells her one thing. He says there are 40 children in the basement. He says that if he takes the sword and goes off seeking revenge, 30 of them will die of starvation in a week. He says revenge isn't going anywhere, but the children will die forever. Lyraine looks at him. She bites her lip. She turns and walks deeper into the basement. She didn't agree, but she didn't answer either. The morning is spent on the first real census. Daniel seats Olwin with a board and charcoal by the exit and calls each person through one by one. Name, age, what they did before the war, injuries, skills. 230 people pass before him in 4 hours. He doesn't remember everyone, but he singles out the key ones. 3 carpenters, 1 mason, 2 seamstresses, a herbalist without herbs, a former stable hand, 2 bakers, a miller who worked at the mill by the north gate before it burned down, a blacksmith's apprentice, an old midwife, a teacher who taught children reading and arithmetic. The rest are peasants, servants, the wives of artisans, teenagers, and 40 children between the ages of 2 and 12. He asks each of them the same final question. What can you do with your hands? The answers vary. Some sew, some knead dough, some know how to lay stones, some can't do anything but are strong and ready to carry things. Daniel listens to each one, nods, thanks them. Thanks each one. Alvin watches this with surprise. The Lord thanks the laundress for knowing how to wash clothes. In this world, lords don't thank laundresses. Lords give orders. But this Lord speaks a simple word to everyone. That's important. We'll need that. Thank you. And people leave him standing a little straighter than when they entered. After taking stock, he maps out a complete resource inventory in his head. Human resources, 86 able-bodied adults. Of them, 20 men in good shape, 30 women capable of physical labor. The rest are limited by health, but can perform light tasks. Food, 4 tons of wheat, Plus, in the far corner of the cellar, 3 barrels of salted meat that Alvin hadn't noticed because they were hidden behind a collapsed shelf. That's another 10 days' worth of protein. Plus the river, which, according to the stable hand, is full of fish. Tools: 22 axes, 14 of which are in working condition. 31 shovels, 16 saws of various sizes, ropes, nails in the smithy. This is a fortune. He had seen camps in Haiti where there were 5 shovels and not a single nail for 300 people. Here, they could build. The only question was the order of operations. What comes first? What comes second? What can be postponed? What cannot? He gathers the foremen by the well. 10 men stand in a semicircle. Among them is Serge. Serge stands slightly to the side. His arms are crossed. His face is stony. Daniel speaks briefly. Today, we're starting 3 things. First, the sanitary zone. Latrines 100 meters from the well, below the groundwater level. All drinking water must be boiled, no exceptions. He explains why. He says that dirty water kills more people than swords. He says that in any ruined city, the first enemy is not hunger, but bloody diarrhea. The foremen listen, some grimace. The Lord is talking about outhouses, a strange lord. But he speaks with confidence, and his words sound like fact, not opinion. Second, separating the sick from the healthy. Everyone with open wounds and a fever is moved to a separate room. The midwife and herbalist are assigned 2 assistants. Their task is to wash the wounds with boiled water and change the bandages. He knows that without antibiotics, this is not enough. But clean water and clean rags reduce mortality from infections by a factor of 5. He remembers this from his Red Cross field medicine courses. Third, reconnaissance of the area. 2 people head east along the river. 2 people head north toward the forest. They look for signs of other survivors. They look for trees suitable for building. They look for wild herbs and roots. They return before dark. Serge raises his hand. He says the 4th point is more important than the first 3. He says they need lookouts on the walls. He says Caldrake might return. Daniel nods. He says Serge is right. He says he's putting him in charge of defense. 4 men on watch. 6-hour shifts. Serge is silent for a second. He was expecting an argument. He expected the Lord to say that defense wasn't necessary. But the Lord agreed immediately and gave him the men. Serge turns and leaves to set up the posts. The first small bridge between them. Thin, unreliable, but a bridge. In the afternoon, Daniel goes to the smithy. The eastern quarter suffered less than the others. The smithy's walls are still standing. The roof has collapsed, but the stone and clay forge is intact. The anvil is in place. Tools are scattered across the floor. Pliers, hammers, punches. He bends down and gathers them up. He hears a sound behind him, a quiet scraping of metal against stone. He turns around. In the corner, behind an overturned workbench, sits a girl. Young. She looks about 17. Black hair, short, pale face. Her palms are bandaged with dirty rags. She looks at him without fear, without hope. She just looks. Next to her is an iron chest with its lid open. He understands. She was locked in the chest when the fire started. Someone locked her in to save her. That someone never came back. He approaches slowly. He sits down on the floor across from her. He says his name is Adrian. She remains silent. He doesn't press her. Instead, he looks at her hands. Burns. She had grabbed the scorching lid of the chest from the inside, trying to get out. He asks if she can work with tools. She remains silent. Then she nods. He says he needs staples, 40 of them, all the same, for the frame of the warehouse he plans to build tomorrow. He says this is the first order for Serentain's new forge. The girl looks at him for a long time. Then she says her name is Yuna Chang, that she is Master Chang's daughter, that Master Chang is dead, that he was the one who locked the chest. Her voice is quiet, steady, without tears. She has already cried them all out. Daniel nods. He says that Master Chang saved Serentain's best blacksmith. Yuna looks at him. For the first time, something stirs in her eyes. Not joy, not gratitude. Surprise. No one has ever called her a blacksmith before, let alone the best. On the evening of the second day, he sits in the study on the top floor of the main tower. The office is almost intact. The stone walls withstood the fire. The table is oak, charred at the edges but still standing. Papers are scattered on the floor, burnt scrolls, pieces of parchment. He goes through them one by one. Most are illegible, lists of some kind of shipments, letters in a language he is gradually beginning to understand. Adrian's body remembers this language. His hands remember how to hold a quill. His brain spits out words one by one, as if from a damaged dictionary. He finds a map, a large one, on thick parchment. The continent of Aurelion. 7 fortress cities marked with coats of arms. Serentain in the west. Caldrake in the north. 5 more houses between them. Lines between the cities. Roads. And beneath the roads, other lines. Thin, blue, signed in small print. Ethereal veins. He doesn't yet understand what that means, but he sees that all the cities stand at the intersections of these lines. So the veins are more important than the roads. So the veins are the key. Beneath the map lies a scrap of a letter, charred at the edges. There are a few lines on it. The handwriting is unfamiliar, not Adrian's, and there's a seal at the bottom. He can't make out the coat of arms on the seal. It's too damaged, but a few words are clearly legible. Veins, map, deliver. He folds the scrap and hides it in his pocket. This doesn't look like ordinary correspondence. It looks like betrayal. At night, he can't sleep again. He lies there and thinks. Someone passed a map of the ether veins beneath the city to Caldrake. Someone Adrian trusted. Maybe from the house itself. Maybe from neighboring houses. Betrayal. That's why the imperial army knew where to strike. That's why the city fell so quickly. He pushes that thought to the back of his mind. Not now. Right now, betrayal is an abstraction. But 300 liters of boiled water a day is reality. He sets his priorities straight. Tomorrow is day 3. Construction of the first warehouse begins. They'll start rebuilding the mill in a week when enough processed wood arrives. The latrines must be ready by morning. Yuna must start forging the staples. Olwin must start a ledger. Every sack, every axe, every plank, everything must be recorded. Because without records, there is no control. Without control, there is no plan. Without a plan, 230 people are not a city. They are a mob, and a mob dies. The third day begins with a problem. One of the wounded died during the night, a man in his 40s, a wound in his abdomen that no one was able to stitch up. The midwife Grana did what she could. She washed it, she bandaged it, but the wound was too deep. Internal bleeding. Daniel stands over the body and feels a heaviness in his chest. He knew this would happen. The first death in the camp is always the hardest. Not because it's unexpected, but because it makes everything real. Before the first death, people live in a fog. After the first death, they realize this isn't a dream or a temporary inconvenience. This is a new life, and in it, they die. He organizes the funeral, quickly, but with respect. They wrap the body in cloth, carry it outside the walls, dig a grave on the hill east of the city. He stands nearby and says the name of the deceased, Rutgar, a baker, father of 2 children who are now sitting in the basement, unaware that their father will never return. Daniel says that Rutgar survived the assault and the fire. He says that Rutgar held out for 3 days. He says that Serentain will remember him. Then he takes a stone and places it at the head of the grave. He tells Olwin to write down the name and the date. He says that everyone who dies in this city will have a stone and a name. People stand in silence. They watch. Something changes in their faces. It is a small gesture, but in a world where peasants are buried without names, it means more than a speech. After the funeral, he returns to work. Today's main task, the granary. Without a closed, dry space, the grain will get wet at the first rain, and they will lose everything. He chooses a spot, one of the surviving houses by the eastern wall. Stone walls, no roof. But the walls are high and sturdy. All they need is a roof. He gathers a crew of builders, 3 carpenters, a mason, 4 strong men to carry the 3s. He explains the plan. Not a roof, a frame. 8 beams across the walls, planks on the beams. Clay mixed with straw on the planks. Waterproof. Quickly. It works. One of the carpenters shakes his head, says they don't build that way. Says they need rafters and shingles and a ridge. Daniel asks how long it will take to build the roof by the book. The carpenter says 3 weeks if they're lucky. Daniel asks when he thinks it will rain. The carpenter looks at the sky. Clouds are coming in from the west. Maybe 2 days, maybe 3. Daniel says they have 2 days. The frame with the clay is put up in a day. They'll do the roof by the book later. But for now, the grain mustn't get wet. The carpenter is silent. Then he nods. An hour later, work is in full swing. Daniel stands nearby and coordinates. He doesn't give orders, he coordinates. He tells people where to carry things. He tells them where to place the supports. He tells them when to stop and adjust the angle. He doesn't know how to lay logs, but he can see the process from above. He knows where the bottleneck is. He knows who's standing idle. He knows when to move 2 people from carrying to mixing clay. By evening, the roof is up. Rough, uneven, but it holds. They haul the sacks of grain into the new warehouse until dark. On the 4th day, he takes Alvin and goes to the river. The river is wide, about 20 meters. The current is moderate. The bank is rocky. He looks at the water and doesn't see a river. He sees energy. A mill wheel, a water drive. The mill at the north gate was powered by hand and by horses, but this river is closer and stronger. If they install a water wheel, the mill would grind around the clock, without people. He asks Alvin if there was ever a water mill in Serentain. Alvin says no. Mills were always built near ether veins and operated by ether power. Water was considered unreliable. Daniel smirks. Etheric power. Magical energy from underground veins. He hasn't figured out exactly how it works yet, but he's grasped the main point. The city depended on ether. The house controlled the ether. The house has fallen. There's no one left to pump the ether, so all the old mechanisms are dead. But water flows on its own, for free, around the clock. He begins to sketch a plan in his head. A wheel, a shaft, a transmission mechanism, millstones. The design is the simplest possible. The Romans built such things 2,000 years ago. For some reason, this world never invented it. They've grown too accustomed to magic. He explains the principle to Olwin. Water turns the wheel turns the shaft turns the millstone. Olwin listens with an expression as if he were being told that the sun could be scooped up with a bucket. Then he is silent for a long time. Then he says one word. True. No question. A statement. He believes it. Not because he understands, but because the Lord says it in the same voice he used when he spoke of grain in sacks and turned out to be right. The scouts return by noon on the 4th day. The 2 who went to the forest brought good news. The forest is dense. Pine, birch, oak. There's enough timber to last for years. It's an hour and a half's walk to the edge. The road is beaten down but passable. The two who went along the river brought different news. 5 kilometers to the east, they found a village. Burned. Empty. But behind the village, in a ravine, they found people. 32 people. Women, children, old people, hiding in earthen burrows, starving, waiting to die. Daniel stands up, says we need to go after them. Serge objects. He says it's risky. He says there might be imperial patrols along the way. He says 32 extra mouths to feed is a strain on supplies that are already stretched to the limit. Daniel listens. Serge is right on every point. There is a risk. Supplies are limited. But Daniel thinks otherwise. 32 people aren't just 32 mouths to feed. They're 16 pairs of hands. Among them might be carpenters, blacksmiths, plowmen, people with skills he lacks. And even if not, even if they're 32 people who can't do anything but dig, he needs people who can dig. Every person is a resource. He tells Serge that he'll go alone. Serge looks at him as if he's mad. He says that a lord doesn't go on reconnaissance. Daniel replies that a lord does what needs to be done. Serge clenches his jaw. Then he says he'll go with him. He takes 3 fighters from the sentries. The 5 of them leave the city at dawn on the 5th day. The road to the ravine takes 4 hours. Adrian's body refuses to go any faster. His right shoulder shoots with every step. His lungs wheeze. Serge walks beside him and says nothing. His silence is heavy. He observes. He assesses. The old Adrian would have covered this distance in an hour and a half, running in full armor. The new Adrian can barely drag himself along and breathes like a sick horse. Serge doesn't say this out loud, but Daniel sees his gaze. The burned-out village looks terrifying. 12 houses, all burned to the ground. A pole stands in the middle of the main street. A charred shield bearing a coat of arms is tied to the pole. Not Everest. A different coat of arms. The village belonged to one of the vassals. The shield is tied to the pole like a trophy. It's a message. Caldrake marks the territory. Beyond the village is a ravine, deep, overgrown with brush. Daniel goes down first. It's quiet below. Then a rustling. Faces peer out from behind the bushes. Gaunt, gray, eyes huge with hunger. A woman with a child in her arms. An old man with a missing leg. Children, lots of children. He counts, 34. 2 more than the scouts said. Apparently more have arrived. He raises his hands, palms forward. He says he's from Serentain. He says they have food and water and shelter. He says that it's a long way to go, but he'll help. The woman with the child looks at his ring. She recognizes the crest, the Everest crest. She starts to cry. Not from grief, from the fact that someone has come. Someone alive has come, bearing the crest she has served all her life. The return trip takes 7 hours. The old man with no leg rides on Serge's back for the last 2 kilometers. Serge carries him in silence. He doesn't complain. This is the second bridge. 34 new residents enter Serentain on the evening of the 5th day. 264 people. Daniel counts the supplies. 4 tons minus 5 days' consumption. The salted meat is almost gone. 34 extra mouths to feed. Supplies have dwindled to 30 days' worth. We need fish. We need to hunt. We need a garden. We need everything faster than he planned. But among the new people, he finds what he was looking for. 2 men from the village turned out to be fishermen. 1 old man knows the herbs and mushrooms of the forest. 2 women know how to weave. A 14-year-old boy worked as an apprentice to a cooper and knows how to make barrels. Barrels. For storage, for pickling, for water. The boy stands before him, dirty and hungry, and doesn't understand why the Lord is looking at him as if he'd found gold. Daniel puts him on the construction crew and tells Olwin to write his name first in the new register. Olwin asks, what register? Daniel says, the Register of Craftsmen. Olwin looks at the boy, then at Daniel, then writes it down. Day 6. Day 7. Work continues nonstop. Daniel sleeps 4 hours. The rest of the time, he's on his feet. The latrines are ready. The sick are separated from the healthy. Midwife Grana grumbles, but admits that it's easier to work in a separate room. Yuna has forged the first batch of staples. 40 of them. Identical. Even. He takes one in his hand and feels the weight. Good steel. Good work. He tells her so. She turns away. But he sees her shoulders tremble. The first praise for craftsmanship, not for obedience. The frame of the second shed goes up in a day and a half with the new staples. The carpenter, who argued on the third day, isn't arguing anymore. He sees that the staples hold better than nails. He doesn't understand why. Daniel explains. A bracket distributes the load across 2 holes instead of 1. The carpenter listens, nods, takes it in. The miller begins clearing the site for a new mill by the river. Daniel draws him a diagram of a water wheel with a stick on the ground. The miller looks at the drawing and scratches the back of his head. He says that it's strange. He says water can't turn a stone. Daniel says it can. He says he needs a week and the right wheel, and he'll prove it. The miller shrugs. The Lord said there was grain in the sacks. There was grain. Maybe the Lord isn't lying about the wheel either. On the evening of the 7th day, he holds the first general roll call in the square. 264 people stand before him. He calls out each work crew, names each foreman, reports what's been done in the week. The warehouse stands. The water is boiling. The sick are separated. The pits have been dug. Guards are on the walls. The fishermen are heading out to the river tomorrow. The smithy is working. The mill will be ready in 2 weeks. He gives the numbers. People need numbers. Not promises, but numbers. 300 liters of boiled water a day. 4 tons of grain in reserve. 40 staples are ready. 2 warehouses under roof. Then he says that every evening there will be a roll call at this spot. Every evening he will say what has been done, what hasn't been done, what is needed for tomorrow. Openly, in front of everyone. It's no secret. This is their city, and everyone in it needs to know what's going on. People stand in silence. Then someone claps. 1 person. Then a second. Then a dozen. Not applause, just the thud of palms against palms. Rough, clumsy, as if they don't know how to clap, but feel they have to. Lyraine stands in the back rows. She doesn't clap, but she came. A week ago, she didn't come to the General Assembly. Today, she came. This is the 3rd bridge. On the 10th day, Daniel stands knee-deep in the river and watches as the miller Horst curses at the logs. The water wheel frame isn't holding. The current is washing the frame away. Horst is wet and angry and yells that the water won't listen and that this is madness. Daniel isn't yelling. He's watching the current. The problem isn't the water. The problem is the angle. The frame was set perpendicular to the current. The water hits it with full force. It needs to be set at an angle. Not 90 degrees, but 45. Then the current pushes the blades instead of breaking the frame. He explains. Horst looks at him with wet eyes. Then he turns the frame around. The water catches the blades. The wheel jerks. It creaks, and it starts to turn. Slowly, unevenly, but it spins. Horst stands knee-deep in the water and stares at the spinning wheel with his mouth open. Then he turns to Daniel. His face has the look of a man who has just seen a stone fly. Daniel says this is only the beginning. He says we need a shaft from the wheel to the millstones. He says we need bearings. Horst doesn't know the word bearing. Daniel explains. A smooth stone in a groove, so the shaft doesn't rub against the wood. Horst nods. He gets the idea. He didn't catch the word, but he gets the concept. That's enough. That same day, Lyraine shows up. She isn't screaming. She isn't demanding revenge. She just comes in and stands silently by the door to the office in the tower. Daniel looks up from the map and waits. She says she wants to be useful. Her voice is steady, steely, but beneath the harshness, you can hear the effort. It's hard for her to say these words. For a whole week, she was nothing but rage and pain and hatred. For a whole week, she watched him build and calculate and organize. And for a whole week, she saw the results. The warehouses stand, people eat, children don't cry at night, and she stands on the sidelines and her rage hasn't built a single wall. Daniel doesn't tell her he's glad. He doesn't praise her for the decision. That would be humiliating. Instead, he gives her a task. He says he needs someone to conduct a census every week. Who has arrived? Who has left? Who was born? Who has died? Who is sick? Who is healthy? Who is doing what? He says that a census isn't paperwork. A census is knowledge. Whoever knows every resident by name knows the city. And he says there's a second matter, disputes. People are starting to quarrel. Over space in the houses, over food rations, over blankets, over tools. He doesn't have time to sort out every dispute. She does. The name Everest gives her the right to judge. Lyraine listens. Her eyes change. They don't warm up, but a focus appears in them. She nods briefly, turns around, walks away. The next day she sits at the entrance to the basement, with a slate and charcoal, and writes down names. Her handwriting is firm and even. She questions everyone sternly but fairly. Old quartermaster Olwin looks at her and smiles for the first time in 10 days. On the 11th day, Daniel climbs back into the tower's office. He is looking for information, any information about the world he has found himself in. Adrian's body remembers fragments, names, places, snippets of conversations, but the memory comes in waves, unpredictably. Sometimes he remembers the face of a man he has never seen. Sometimes his hands make a movement his brain didn't command. His body remembers how to sit in the saddle. It remembers how to hold a sword. It remembers the smell of the stable and the taste of the wine Adrian drank in the evenings. But it doesn't remember why Adrian fought. It doesn't remember politics. It doesn't remember betrayal. He sifts through the papers. Most have been destroyed. But in the bottom drawer of the desk lies a bundle of letters, partially charred. Letters from lords of other houses. Polite, formal. Trade agreements, grain shipments, ether contracts. One letter from House Thornvale, signed by Lord Cassian Thornvale. The text concerns joint exercises, nothing suspicious, but the tone is strange, too courteous, too smooth. Daniel sets it aside. Another letter from House H. Allendar, short, dry, a refusal to meet, no explanation. He sets this aside as well. A third unsigned letter, a fragment, 3 lines. They know about the Northern Passage. Send the coordinates by spring. Payment as agreed. Daniel reads it 3 times. The Northern Passage. Coordinates. Payment. Someone was selling information about Serentain long before the assault. Someone among those who corresponded with Adrian. He takes this scrap and places it next to the first one he found. 2 clues, both incomplete. Both lead to a traitor he cannot yet identify. He hides both scraps in a hiding place behind a stone in the wall. Then he returns to work. On the 12th day, a convoy appears at the city gates. 3 carts. The oxen can barely pull them. The carts carry the wounded. About 40 people. Women, men, children, all in poor condition. Dirty. Hungry. Some have sword wounds. A woman in a traveling cloak walks at the head of the convoy. She is short, black-haired. Her face is calm. Tired, but calm. A worn leather bag slung over her shoulder. In her hands, not a weapon, but a bundle of scrolls. She approaches the gate and says her name is Min-seo Han. She says she is a healer. She says she is coming from the east and is leading the wounded she gathered along the way. She says she heard that someone is still alive in Serentain. She asks if there is room here. A sentry on the wall looks down at her. Then he shouts down. He calls for Daniel. He comes to the gate and sees her. 26 years old, a doctor's hands, the eyes of a person who hasn't slept in 3 days, but stands straight because he's used to standing straight. He knows this type of person. He's like that himself, or used to be. He says there is room. He tells the wagon to drive in. He turns to Alvin and says they need 40 portions of porridge. Min-seo looks at the city, at the warehouses, at the latrines, at the boiling pots by the well. Her eyebrows rise. She says she has seen 7 ruined cities in the last month, and none of them had boiling pots. Daniel replies that this one does. Min-seo looks at him. A moment in which 2 professionals recognize each other. She examines the wounded in 3 hours. She works quickly, silently. Her hands are steady. She knows herbs that the midwife Grana does not know. She knows how to set a dislocation. She knows how to stitch a wound so it won't fester. Grana stands nearby and watches, at first with suspicion, then with surprise, then with relief. For the first time in 2 weeks, someone has come who can do what she cannot. Min-seo finishes her examination and comes to Daniel with a report. Of the 30 wounded in the city, 4 are near death. 2 have blood poisoning. It is impossible to save them without the right herbs. The rest will survive if there is clean water and proper bandages. She says she needs a room, light, clean cloth for bandages, boiling water always available, a separate room for the critically ill. Daniel listens. Then he asks what exactly the infirmary should look like. Min-seo looks at him. No one had ever asked her before what the infirmary should look like. They always just shuffled her into a corner tent and told her to work with what she had. She begins to speak slowly, then faster. Light from the north side because northern light is even and doesn't blind you. Tables at a certain height so your back doesn't hurt. A separate entrance for the seriously injured so they don't have to be carried across the entire hall. A place to wash hands at the entrance. Shelves for herbs. She speaks for 5 minutes. Daniel listens without interrupting. Then she says they'll build the infirmary exactly as she describes. She trails off mid-sentence. She looks at him as if he had said something in a foreign language. Then she asks if it's true. He replies that she will be the one treating people, not him. So the facility must be tailored to her. Min-seo turns away. He sees her run the back of her hand over her eyes, quickly, almost imperceptibly. But he notices. It wasn't just the wounded who came with Min-seo's convoy. Among them were a dozen healthy people, peasants from eastern villages. They had fled from the imperial troops. One of them is a former mason. Daniel recruits him to the construction crew on the spot. Another knows how to make lime from river stones. Lime. Daniel almost laughs. Lime is for disinfection. Lime is for whitewashing walls. Lime is for mortar. 1 man with 1 skill and 3 problems solved. He tells the man that he will get his own kiln and 2 assistants. The man nods, bewildered. All his life he has been burning lime alone on the edge of the village, and no one considered it important work. Now the Lord is telling him he is critically important. 304 people. Supplies for 25 days. The mill will be ready in a week. The fishermen bring in 10 kilograms of fish a day. That's not enough. We need more. We need nets, not fishing rods. He asks the seamstresses to weave fishing nets from leftover ropes. The seamstresses have never woven nets before. He explains the knot. Simple, repetitive, like knitting, only with rope. 2 days later, the first net is ready. Rough, crooked, but it catches fish. The fishermen pull in 30 kilograms on the first haul. This changes everything. 30 kilos of fish a day means protein for 300 people. We can use the grain more sparingly. The supply has grown to 35 days. Daniel feels the noose around his throat loosen slightly. Slightly, not by much, but enough to breathe. On the 14th day, Min-seo comes to him in the evening. She says 2 of the critically ill have died. Blood poisoning. She couldn't save them. Her voice is steady, professional, but her hands are clenched into fists. Daniel nods. She says she did what she could. Min-seo replies that she could have done more if they had herbs. She needs willow bark for the fever, a specific kind of moss for bandages, the root of a plant she names in an Eastern language that Daniel doesn't understand but writes down as it sounds. She knows all of this grows in the forest, but she has no time to go into the cause. She works 20 hours a day. He says he'll send 2 men with her list. She'll write down the names and draw pictures. They'll find them. Min-seo looks at him. She says that in the last town where she worked, the Lord told her that herbs are a woman's whim, and that true medicine is prayer. Daniel replies that prayer doesn't lower a fever. Min-seo smiles for the first time. Briefly. Wearily. But she smiles. At night, he lies awake and counts. 304 people. 3 deaths in 2 weeks. 1 from wounds, 2 from infection. A mortality rate of about 1% per week. That's a lot. Under normal circumstances, it would be a disaster. In the conditions of a ruined city without medicine, it's acceptable. But he wants better. Lime will help. A field hospital will help. Herbs will help. Clean water is already helping. Not a single case of intestinal infection in 2 weeks. Not a single one. Boiling works. The latrines work. He allows himself a second of pride. A second. Then he remembers that the mill isn't finished yet. That only 3/4 of the city walls are standing. That Caldrake is still there. That the traitor is still unknown. That he sleeps 4 hours a day, and Adrian's body is starting to give out. His right shoulder aches constantly, even at night, even when he isn't moving. He knows what that means. Torn ligaments. It won't heal without surgery. There is no surgery here. That means his right arm will be weak. Forever. He rolls onto his left side, closes his eyes. The 15th day will be long, just like all the previous ones. On the 15th day, the mill was fully operational. The water wheel turns the shaft. The shaft turns the grain. Grain pours in from above. Flour comes out from below. Horst stands nearby and can't take his eyes off it. He's been a miller for 20 years. For 20 years, he's been driving horses in circles or waiting for the master miller to start the mechanism. And now the stones turn on their own. Water does the work that used to be done by 10 horses, for free, without stopping. He touches the shaft with his hand, then pulls it away, then touches it again, like a child who doesn't believe the toy is real. Daniel stands on the bank and watches. The mill is crude. The wheel creaks. The bearings, made of smooth river stones, wear out quickly and will have to be replaced every week. But it works. 15 hours of milling a day. 3 shift workers. He found 3 men with injured legs who can't dig or carry heavy loads, but stand perfectly well by the millstone and control the grain feed. Each person has a task suited to their abilities. This isn't kindness, it's efficiency. The mill produces 90 kilograms of flour a day. For 300 people, that's more than enough. For the first time in 2 weeks, they aren't counting every gram. Daniel authorizes larger portions. Olwin records the new rations in the ledger. The book is already thick. Alvin keeps it every day. Expenses, receipts, balance. He began to understand the system. Not right away. At first, he got confused. He wrote everything down in a single line. Daniel sat down with him and showed him the double entry system. Every transaction twice, where it came from and where it went. Alvin stared at it for half an hour. Then his hands began to tremble. He said that he had managed the warehouse for 30 years, and for 30 years had not known where the discrepancy went. He always blamed it on rats and shrinkage. But the discrepancy was that he only counted expenses and never counted income. The double-entry bookkeeping revealed a hole in his own system that had existed for decades. He sat in silence for 5 minutes. Then he stood up and hugged the ledger as if it were a living being. On the 16th day, Daniel begins construction of the infirmary. The site has been chosen. A house at the northeast corner of the city. Stone walls, windows facing north, as Min-seo requested. A team of carpenters clears the interior of debris. A mason reinforces the walls. Daniel goes to Yuna's smithy and asks her to make door hinges, brackets for shelves, hooks for hanging lamps. Yuna listens in silence. She marks the measurements on a piece of iron. Then she asks, why so many hinges? He says the doors will open in both directions, so they can carry a wounded person on a stretcher without stopping. Yuna thinks for a second. Then she says that for this, they need swivel hinges, not regular ones. She demonstrates with her hands how they will work. Daniel watches. This is better than what he asked for. He tells her that she's right, and that she should do as she sees fit. Yuna turns back to the workbench, but her back is straighter than it was yesterday. 3 days later, the infirmary is ready. Min-seo enters and stops at the threshold. Northern light streams in evenly through the windows. The tables are at the right height. She checks. She rests her elbow on the edge of the table. Perfect. A separate room for the seriously wounded. A separate entrance. A hand-washing station with a clay basin made by a potter among the new arrivals. Shelves for herbs that are already stacked in bundles. Doors on Yuna's swivel hinges. Min-seo pushes the door. The door swings freely in both directions and returns to the closed position. She pushes it again. And again. Then she turns to Daniel. She says that during 6 years of wandering, she treated patients and barns and under the open sky. She says that not a single lord, not a single city, not a single commander has ever asked her what the place where she works should be like. Her voice is steady, but her hands are shaking. Daniel says that a place should be what the person working there sees it as. He says that this isn't charity, but common sense. Min-seo is silent. Then she nods. Then she goes into the infirmary and doesn't come out for 3 hours. The midwife Grana later tells him that Min-seo sat on the floor and cried, quietly, alone. Then she stood up and began laying out her instruments. Daniel doesn't speak of this aloud. There are things that don't need to be discussed. You just have to see them and remember them. On the 20th day, the first serious conflict breaks out. 2 men from the construction crew are fighting over a house. One has taken an empty house by the south wall and moved his family there. The other says that this house belonged to his father before the war and demands it back. Serge breaks them up. Their fists are covered in blood. Serge brings both of them to Daniel. Daniel looks at them and realizes this isn't about the house. It's about power. About ownership, about who has a claim to what, in a city that no longer belongs to anyone. He turns to Lyraine. He says it's her business. Lyraine steps forward. She sorts out the dispute in front of everyone. She asks both of them. She listens. Then she renders her decision. The house belongs to whoever restores it, whoever puts in the labor, not blood, not inheritance, labor. The one who took the house and brought a family, began the repairs, and earned the walls. The one who claims it by right of blood hasn't laid a single brick, and will receive another house, any one of his choosing, if he restores it with his own hands. The decision is harsh. The second man is angry. He leaves in silence. But the others heard, and the others remembered. The right to a home through labor. This is the new rule. Nowhere in Aurelion had they done it this way. Houses were passed down by blood, land by title. But here, the walls belong to the one who built them. Daniel looks at Lyraine. She stands straight, chin lifted. Her burned hand, in a glove, is clenched at her hip. She isn't waiting for his approval. She has her decision like a judge, like a person with authority. He nods to her, briefly. She nods back. This is their language. No words, no explanations. A nod. You did it. A nod. I know. On the 22nd day, Daniel sends off the first trade caravan. The word caravan sounds grand for a single cart and 2 people, but the essence is the same. Fish. 20 kilograms of dried fish they've prepared over the past week. He sends the cart to the nearest trading post in the south. The post belongs to House Verand, a small house, not the strongest, but alive. Daniel doesn't expect much from the outpost. He needs 2 things: salt and information. Salt for curing meat and fish for the winter. Information about what is happening in the world beyond the walls of Serentain. The merchants return in 4 days. There is salt, 5 sacks, exchanged for fish, and to the surprise of the merchant, who didn't expect anyone to be alive in dead Serentain, let alone trading. There is information too. Caldrake is moving east. 2 houses have already surrendered without a fight. House Hallandar has signed a non-aggression pact. House Thornvale is silent. House Verand is nervous and hoarding grain. The Empire has taken control of the ether veins from the defeated houses and is pumping energy northward. Panic is growing in the south. People are fleeing the cities. Refugees are heading west and south. Some are searching for Serentain because rumors of a living city have begun to spread. Daniel listens and takes notes. The map in his head is being updated with new points. Caldrake in the east. Hallandar has surrendered. Thornvale is silent. Verand is nervous. Serentain is deep in the rear. They've been forgotten. That's bad because they're alone. And good because as long as they're forgotten, no one bothers them. Time. That's his main resource. Time while Caldrake is busy with others. On the 25th day, a girl with 8 children arrives in the city. She enters the gate, and the first thing she does is yell at the guard for taking too long to open the gate. The guard is taken aback. The girl is freckled. Her red hair is dirty and tangled. Her clothes are torn. She looks 19. Behind her stand 8 children, aged 5 to 12. All are dirty. All are skinny. All are alive. Her name is Caitlin O'Brien. She is the daughter of the village headman from a village north of Serentain that was burned to the ground. Her father is dead. Her mother is dead. She took all the children she could find and dragged them through the forest for 3 days. Serge brings her to Daniel. She stands before him and speaks without stopping. She tells how she walked, how she crossed the stream at night, how she hid the children in a ravine when there were horsemen on the road, how she fed them bark and berries, how she carried the youngest in her arms on the last day because the girl couldn't walk. She talks for 20 minutes. Daniel listens without interrupting. Serge stands nearby and listens too. When Caitlin falls silent, Daniel asks how she knew the stream was shallow at that spot. She replies that she didn't know, but checked with a stick before leading the children. He asks why she hid the children in the ravine and not in the forest. She replies that in the ravine from above, whereas in the woods the leaves rustle and the children would be heard. He asks how she knew which berries were edible. She replies that she tasted them herself first and waited half an hour. If she didn't feel sick, it meant they were safe. He listens and observes. Not a 19-year-old girl. An operations manager with field experience. Rough, untrained, but with an instinct that can't be taught. She made decisions under pressure. She checked before taking risks. She prioritized the group's safety over speed. 3 days in the woods with 8 children, and everyone is alive. He tells her that starting tomorrow, she's in charge of the city's children's sector. All the children. Their housing, their food, their safety, their education. Caitlin looks at him. She expected to be put in the corner and given a bowl of porridge. She didn't expect to be made head of the sector. Then she says she needs 3 things. A separate room for the children, away from the adults. Milk for the little ones. And someone who knows how to teach reading and writing, because the children will go wild if they do nothing but eat and sleep. Daniel smirks. 3 demands in the first minute. She's quick. He says they'll set aside a room, that the goats are looking for something, that there's a teacher in town. Caitlin nods. She turns and walks away to gather the children. Serge watches her go, and for the first time in 3 weeks, his face expresses something other than suspicion and fatigue. It looks like respect. On the 30th day, Daniel stands on the city wall and looks down. 342 people. The mill is running. The infirmary is open. The blacksmith is forging. The fishermen are catching fish. The builders are putting up the third house. The children are learning to read and write in the old teacher's tent. Lyraine is conducting the census. Min-seo is treating the sick. Yuna is forging. Caitlin is leading 12 children so that not a single one has gone missing in 5 days. Alvin is hugging his ledger and won't part with it even at night. Serge stands on the wall nearby and says nothing. Then he says that Lord Adrian has changed. Daniel replies that war changes everyone. Serge shakes his head. He says that war doesn't teach people to build mills. He says that war doesn't teach lords to count sacks. He says he doesn't know who now lives in this body, but he sees that this man raised the city from the ashes in 30 days. Daniel looks at him. Serge looks back. There is a long silence between them. Then Serge says that it doesn't matter to him who he is. What matters to him is that the city stands, that people eat, that children laugh. He says he will protect this man not because he is Lord Everest, but because he is the only one who knows what to do next. Daniel nods. Serge nods back. This isn't friendship. It isn't trust. It's a contract. You build, I protect. As long as it works, we're in this together. Daniel accepts these terms. They're fair. In a ruined world, fair terms are worth more than gold. On the evening of the 30th day, he sits alone in the tower's office. He takes 2 scraps of letters from a hiding place, lays them out on the table, looks at them. Somewhere in this world, there is a man who sold Serentain, sold 80,000 lives for a pittance. Daniel doesn't know who it is, doesn't know where he's from, doesn't know why. But he knows he'll find him, because the traitor left traces. Traitors always leave traces. And while Daniel builds walls and mills and infirmaries, he quietly gathers the shards of truth. Fragment by fragment, seal by seal, name by name. He puts the letters back together, hides them behind a stone. Then he walks over to the window. Serentain below, dark, quiet, but not dead. 30 days ago, it was a pile of ashes. Today, smoke rises from 3 chimneys. A mill wheel creaks by the river. Somewhere, the sound of a hammer can be heard. Yuna is working late. He stands by the window and allows himself to feel. Not pride, not satisfaction, something quieter, something deeper. He is a builder. He has been a builder all his life, in another world, in another body. But ruins smell the same, and the first smoke from a new chimney means the same thing in any universe. We are here. We are alive. We are building. On the 32nd day, Daniel hears the word ether for the first time, not as an abstraction, but as a problem. Alvin comes in the morning and says the oven in the bakery is going out. Not because of the wind, not because of the damp. The ether rift beneath the eastern quarter shifted after the assault, and the thin vein that fed the city's ovens no longer provides heat. Daniel stands before the extinguished oven and thinks. He knew the ether existed. He'd seen those blue lines on the map. He'd heard snippets of explanations from Alvin. But until today, ether had been a foreign word from a foreign world. Now it has become a cold furnace with no fire. He asks Alvin exactly how the ether supply worked. Alvin explains at length and in a confusing manner. The gist is simple. Veins run beneath the city. The veins carry energy. The energy rises through stone channels in the walls of the buildings. The channels lead to the hearths. A hearth with an ether supply burns without firewood. Not forever, but for a long time. Firewood is needed only to get it started. After that, the ether keeps it going. Serentain stood at the intersection of 3 veins. That made him rich. That's what ruined him. Caldrake knew where the veins were. He knew where the city drew its power from. He struck precisely at the nodes. Now the veins are damaged. The channels in the walls are destroyed. The ether flows uselessly into the ground. Daniel listens and translates into his own language. Ether is infrastructure, a pipeline, a power grid. When a bomb hits a substation, the city goes dark. It's the same here. The bomb hit the substation. Only this substation is magical. He asks Olwin if the channels can be repaired. Olwin shakes his head. He says they need a master etherician, a specialist who can sense the veins and direct the flow. There was one in Serentain. He died during the assault. Without a master, the channels are dead. Daniel nods. He accepts it. So the ether is unavailable for now. That means everything relies on firewood, water, and muscle power. It's a limitation, a serious one, but not fatal. People have lived without electricity for millennia. They'll survive without the ether too. He sends an extra crew into the forest for firewood. 5 people, every day, 2 cartloads of firewood. That'll be enough for cooking and heating. Winter will come in 4 months. By winter, every house needs a stove. Ordinary stoves, wood burning, no magic. He starts counting. 12 houses, 12 stoves, 1 mason. That means 1 stove a week. 12 weeks. 3 months. They'll make it. It'll be a close call, but they'll make it. On the 35th day, Serge brings a prisoner to him. A man in his 30s, skinny, dirty, caught on the road south of the city. He was carrying a bag of tools and a map of the area on thin parchment. The map is detailed, too detailed for a vagrant. It marks roads that aren't on ordinary maps, trails through the forest, river crossings, and a small circle at the location of Serentain, with a note. Daniel can't read the note. The handwriting is small and unfamiliar. He asks the prisoner who he is. The man remains silent. Serge stands nearby with his hand on his sword. Daniel gestures to stop him. He sits down on a rock across from the prisoner. He says he doesn't need torture. He says he needs information. He says that if the man tells the truth, he'll get food, shelter, and work. If he lies, he'll be sent beyond the walls without food or water. A simple choice. The prisoner remains silent for another minute. Then he says his name is Grace, that he is a scout, but not an imperial one. He works for House Verand. Verand sent him to verify whether the rumors that Serentain is alive are true. The map is his tool. A mark on the map indicates a target for surveillance. Daniel listens. Verand, that very house to the south where he sent the trade caravan. Verand is nervous and sends a scout. That makes sense. It's even a good thing. A nervous neighbor is a potential ally. He asks Grace exactly what Verand wants to know. Grace answers directly. How many people? How many fighters? Are there walls? Is there food? Is Lord Everest alive? Daniel thinks for a moment. Then he does something no lord in the history of Aurelion has ever done. He takes Grace by the hand and leads her through the city. He shows him everything. The mill, the infirmary, the warehouses, the smithy, the walls, the people. He hides nothing. Grace walks along, looking around with the expression of someone being shown a magic trick and unable to spot the catch. 342 people, a working mill, an infirmary bathed in northern light, warehouses full of grain, a smithy from which the clang of a hammer can be heard, children learning to read. Daniel tells Grace that he can return to his lord and recount everything he has seen, every detail, and convey the offer. Serentain is open for trade, fish and flour in exchange for salt and iron. And if Verand wishes to send an envoy for negotiations, he will be received. Grace leaves the next morning, well fed, with a full bag of provisions for the road. Serge sees him off to the gate and watches him leave with a sour look on his face. Then he approaches Daniel and says it's a mistake. He says the spy now knows everything about the city, all its weaknesses, all its positions. Daniel replies that the spy would have found out everything anyway. Better to show him ourselves and add a message than let him peek and figure it out. Serge disagrees, but he doesn't argue. The contract works. You build, I guard. As long as it works. On the 38th day, Min-seo comes to him with a different kind of problem. An epidemic. It hasn't started yet, but it could. 2 children from Caitlin's group have fallen ill. Fever, rash. Min-seo has isolated both of them in a separate room in the infirmary. But if it's what she thinks it is, 20 more people could get infected. Daniel asks what she thinks. She says the name of the disease in a language he doesn't understand. She explains the symptoms. Fever, a red rash from the chest to the hands, joint pain. Lasts 10 days, usually not fatal, but it can kill emaciated children. Daniel translates it in his head. It sounds like measles, or rubella, or something local with no earthly equivalent. It doesn't matter. The protocol is the same. Quarantine, isolation of the sick, contact tracing. Who has been in close contact with the sick in the last 3 days? He sets up the operation in an hour. Min-seo designates a quarantine room. Lyraine uses her census records to find everyone who has had contact with the sick children. 14 people. They are moved to a separate room for observation. Caitlin takes the remaining children and leads them to the opposite end of the city. Angry, frightened, but she acts decisively. Daniel stands at the entrance to the quarantine zone and explains to people what is happening. He doesn't scare them. He doesn't hide anything. He speaks plainly. The disease is contagious. We'll stop it. That requires 10 days of isolation. It's unpleasant, but it works. People listen. They grumble, but they obey. The authority of sacks of grain and a working mill does its job. This lord was right twice. Maybe he'll be right a third time. The 10 days of quarantine drag on slowly. 3 more of the contacts fall ill. That makes 5 patients in total. Min-seo works around the clock. Herbal decoctions, cold compresses, clean water. She sleeps 2 hours a day on a bench in the infirmary. Her logbook lies under her head instead of a pillow. Daniel comes to see her on the 4th day of quarantine. He brings a bowl of hot porridge and a mug of herbal tea. He sets them down beside her. Min-seo lifts her head. Her eyes are red. Her hands tremble with exhaustion. She takes the bowl. She eats in silence. Then she says that all 5 will survive. The rash is subsiding. The fever is breaking. The quarantine is working. There have been no new cases in the last 2 days. Daniel nods. Then he tells her she needs to sleep. She replies that there's no time to sleep. He says Grana will take over for 6 hours. Min-seo starts to object. He says a dead doctor can't treat anyone. She falls silent. She looks at him. Then she lies down on the bench and falls asleep 30 seconds later. He covers her with her coat and leaves quietly. On the 42nd day, the quarantine is lifted. All 5 have recovered. Not a single death. Not a single new case outside the contact group. Min-seo stands at the entrance to the infirmary and watches as the recovered children run toward Caitlin. Caitlin grabs the first 2 and hugs them so tight they squeal. Then she lets go and starts scolding them for getting sick. The children laugh. Min-seo watches this, and on her face is an expression Daniel has seen only once before, in Japan, when their medic, after 12 hours of surgery in a field hospital, stepped outside and saw the patient he had been piecing back together walking down the hallway on his own. The expression of a man who knows why he lives. On the 45th day, Daniel does what he had planned from the very first week, a communal dinner in the square. Not just a food distribution, not just a meal, an event. He's been preparing it for 3 days. He asks the carpenters to nail together long tables from fresh planks. He asks Yuna to forge hooks for the lanterns. He asks Caitlin to gather wildflowers outside the city walls. Caitlin asks why the flowers. He says that flowers on the table turn food into a dinner. She doesn't understand, but goes and brings 2 buckets. Alvin carves nameplates out of wood, a name on each one. 356 nameplates. Over the past few days, 14 more people have arrived from distant villages. Each nameplate is placed in a specific spot at the table. Daniel arranges them himself. The blacksmith next to the lord, the laundress next to the mason, the healer next to the fisherman, children mixed in with the adults. No division by status, no division by occupation. Everyone at one table. The evening is warm, the sunset is golden. Lanterns hang from hooks on the Yuna. Tables are arranged in a P shape in the main square between the tower and the well. People come out of their houses, basements, and tents. They approach the tables. They see the name tags. They look for their own. They find it. They sit down. Some look at their neighbor's nameplate and are surprised. Martha the baker sits next to Serge. Serge looks at the baker's nameplate and then at Daniel. Daniel doesn't return the gaze. He's busy. He stands by the cauldron and ladles out the soup, personally, to everyone. The lord with a ladle in his hand. Alvin stands nearby and hands out bowls. His hands aren't shaking. For the first time in a month and a half, his hands are completely steady. When everyone is seated and everyone has a bowl, Daniel takes his seat. Between Yuna and the young cooper. Yuna looks at her nameplate, then at the lord's nameplate next to her, then at the food. She doesn't look up, but her shoulders relax half an inch. Someone important is sitting next to her, and that someone didn't sit there by accident. The silence lasts a minute. Then Daniel lifts his bowl. He speaks briefly. He says that 45 days ago, there was nothing in this town but ashes and tears. He says that today, 356 people are sitting at the table eating a hot meal. He says that it wasn't gods or magic that did this. It was the hands of each and every one of them. Hands that dug holes, hands that kneaded dough, hands that forged staples, hands that healed wounds, hands that carried children through the forest. He doesn't give a speech. He lists, briefly, by the facts. Names. Martha, who bakes bread in a waist-high oven and feeds the whole town. Horst, who believed that water turns stone, and now the mill grinds without horses. Yuna, who forged staples for every warehouse and hooks for these lanterns. Min-seo, who saved 5 children from fever and didn't sleep for 10 nights. Caitlin, who came with 8 children and didn't lose a single one. Lyraine, who knows every resident's name and settles disputes so that both sides walk away with work. Alvin, who keeps track of every grain and every nail. Serge, who stands on the wall every night. He calls out names, 30 names, 40. Each time a man at the table flinches, not out of fear, because he has been called, him personally, by name, in front of everyone. When he finishes, the silence is so thick you can hear the wick crackling in the lantern. Then Olwin stands up. Old, hunchbacked, eyes wet. He speaks softly. He says he has served House Everest for 30 years. He says he has seen 3 lords. He says that not one of them ever sat the blacksmith next to him. His voice breaks. He sits down. Silence. Then Martha starts tapping her spoon on the table, rhythmically, slowly. Someone else joins in. Then another. Within a minute, the whole square is tapping. Not applause, not shouting. Tapping. Heavy, steady, like a pulse, like the heartbeat of a city that has come alive. Daniel sits and is silent, and inside him something cracks. It doesn't break. It cracks like ice on a river in spring. He remembers. Oregon. The last night. Field headquarters, 20 people on his team, tired, dirty, happy because they'd recaptured 2 neighborhoods that were considered lost in a single day. He remembers their faces. He remembers how cook Maggie brought a pie made from nothing and everyone laughed. He remembers how engineer Tom fell asleep face down in a proc and no one bothered to wake him. He will never see them again. Never. The thought comes quietly, without drama, just a fact. He sits at the table in a foreign world, in a foreign body, and feels everything at once. Gratitude that there are living people around him clinking their spoons, and grief that other living people remained on the other side of the cliff in Oregon. Yuna turns her head and looks at him. He doesn't know what she sees on his face, but she silently pushes her bowl of bread toward him. A small gesture, the only one she knows how to make. After dinner, he goes to the wall. He stands alone. The night is warm. The stars are foreign, not a single familiar constellation. He looks up at the sky and, for the first time since waking up, allows himself to ask a question. Why am I here? Not how, not why. For what purpose? Adrian's body didn't come to him by chance. He feels it. Too precise a coincidence. A specialist in post-disaster city reconstruction wakes up in a ruined city after a disaster. Either the universe has a sense of humor, or someone chose him. Intentionally. Purposely. He doesn't know who. He doesn't know why. But he knows one thing. If someone placed him here as a tool, then the tool is working. 356 people are alive. The city stands. The mill turns. On the 50th day, a reply arrives from the House of Arand. Not a letter, a person. A 31-year-old woman in a traveling cloak, riding a skinny horse. Behind her are 2 pack mules laden with sacks. She stops at the gate and introduces herself in a calm, even voice. Serena Well, former treasurer of House Verand. Former because she no longer serves the house. The sentry on the wall calls for Serge. Serge calls for Daniel. Daniel goes out to the gate and sees her. Tall, straight back, dark hair tied in a bun, glasses on her nose. Not glass, mountain crystal, polished to transparency. In this world, glasses are a rarity. Only those who are rich or important enough to afford the work of a crystal craftsman. She looks at Daniel through those glasses, and he sees intelligence, cold, precise, assessing. She says she brought 20 sacks of salt, 10 rolls of fabric, 3 sacks of seeds, and herself. Daniel asks why. She answers flatly. The House of Arand signed a secret pact with Caldrake 2 months ago. She was against it. Her opinion wasn't asked. When she tried to warn the council about the economic consequences of capitulation, she was removed. When she tried to leave, she was threatened. She left at night. She took what she could. She brought it here because the spy Grace returned with a story about a city that counts sacks, builds mills, and heals children. And because, for the first time in a year, she heard of a lord who keeps accounts not to steal. Daniel listens. He looks at the mules. 20 sacks of salt are gold. Cloth is clothing and bandages. Seeds are a harvest in 3 months. But Serena Well herself is worth more than the entire caravan. The treasurer. A person who knows finance, trade flows, prices, contracts, connections between the houses. He invites her inside, leads her to the tower's office, seats her at the table, takes out Olwin's ledger and places it before her, says this is their financial system. Serena opens the book, reads. She turns the page. Another one. Another. Her eyebrows rise. She looks at him and says, "This is double-entry bookkeeping." He nods. She says that in Aurelion, no one uses double-entry bookkeeping. All the houses track expenses and never track income. She knows this because for 10 years she tried to explain to the lords why their budgets didn't balance. And for 10 years, they didn't listen to her. Daniel says that here they will listen to her. Serena closes the book. She places her palms on the cover. She is silent for 10 seconds. Then she says she needs a room, a desk, paper, and for no one to disturb her. He says the room will be ready by evening. Serena nods. She stands up. She leaves. Alvin peeks through the door and asks in a whisper who this woman is. Daniel replies that she's the person who'll be better at accounting than both of them combined. Alvin isn't offended. Alvin is too smart to take offense at the truth. In 3 days, Serena rewrites the city's entire accounting system. She doesn't tear down what Alvin built. She builds on it. She adds categories. She separates operating expenses from capital expenditures. She introduces the concept of depreciation for tools. An axe that has been in use for a year is valued not as a new axe, but as a daily share of a new axe. Olwin sits nearby and soaks it all in. His eyes shine. For 30 years, he'd felt there was a hole in his system. Now that hole is being filled by a woman with crystal-framed glasses and an icy voice. He's happy. Daniel comes in the evening and sees the two of them poring over the spreadsheets. Serena explains. Olwin takes notes. Two people who have found common ground through numbers. He smiles and leaves without interrupting. On the 54th day, Serena brings him the first report. Dry, precise, merciless. The city spends more than it produces. Grain reserves for 20 days. Fish covers protein, but not calories. Firewood is being consumed faster than it's being harvested. At the current rate, there will be a 40% fuel shortage by winter. 3 things are needed. Double the fish catch. Start stockpiling firewood with a 6-month supply. And most importantly, plant. The seeds she brought are winter rye and turnips. If sown in the next 2 weeks, the harvest will be ready in 3 months, before winter. Daniel listens and nods at each point. Serena expected an argument. She expected the Lord to say the numbers were wrong, or that she was being too pessimistic, or that God would provide. Instead, he says she needs to present this report at the evening roll call, in front of everyone. Serena freezes. She says the report is unpleasant. People won't want to hear that supplies are low. Daniel replies that people are adults. They don't need a fairy tale. They need the truth and a plan. Serena looks at him. Then she nods. That evening, she stands before 360 people and reads the numbers. Her voice is steady, emotionless. Facts. People listen. Their faces are serious. When she finishes, there is silence. Then Horst the miller raises his hand and says that his mill can grind more if a second millstone is added. Then a fisherman says he knows a spot further up the river where the fish are bigger. Then Caitlin says that children over 10 can gather firewood. The people don't panic. They make a decision. Serena stands and watches this. For the first time all day, her face isn't frozen. Confusion. She's used to the numbers provoking anger or denial. She isn't used to them provoking action. On the 58th day, planting begins. The fields south of the city are scorched, but the soil beneath the ash is rich. Ash is fertilizer. He knows this from Oregon. After a fire, the soil is more fertile than ever. All they need to do is plow and sow. There is no plow. There are no horses. He improvises. Yuna forges tips for hoes, 20 of them. 20 people go out into the field and dig up the earth by hand, half a hectare a day. Slowly, hardly, but it's real. Seeds are sown in the furrows. Turnips, rye, a little cabbage from seeds found in the pocket of one of the village women. She carried them with her as a talisman. Now the talisman will go into the ground. Daniel stands at the edge of the field and watches as the people sow. It's a different sound, not the clang of hammers, not the creak of a mill, the quiet rustle of seeds on the ground, the sound of the future. Serena stands nearby. She records the area sown. She calculates the expected harvest. She says that with normal weather, the turnips will yield their first harvest in 60 days, the rye in 90, if there's enough rain, if there are no early frosts, if no one tramples the field. Daniel replies that they can't control the rain, but everything else is in their hands. Serena smiles, her first smile in a week. Subtle, cold, but a smile. On the night of the 58th day, he takes the scraps of letters out of the hiding place again. 2 scraps, different handwriting. 1 subject. Veins. A map. Coordinates. Deliver. Payment. Serena is nearby now. He can ask her. She knows the house's politics. She knows who trades with whom, who owes whom, who hates whom. The next morning, he shows her the scraps. He doesn't say what he's thinking. He just lays them out in front of her and waits. Serena reads. She puts on her glasses. She reads again. Then she sets them aside. She says the handwriting on the second scrap looks familiar. Not exactly, but it resembles the handwriting of the Thornvale House secretary. She saw Thornvale's documents when she worked on intercity contracts. Thornvale. Daniel recalls the letter from the desk drawer. Polite. Too courteous. Lord Cassian Thornvale. He doesn't voice his conclusions. He tells Serena that this information is between them. She nods. She knows how to keep secrets. 10 years with the house taught her. On the 60th day, Daniel stands on the wall and counts. 382 people. The mill runs 20 hours a day. 2 millstones. Horst has trained a second miller. Min-seo's infirmary has admitted 60 patients over the past month. 7 have died. The rest have survived. The mortality rate has halved compared to the first week. Yuna's smithy has expanded. A shed has appeared next to the forge. Under the shed is a second workbench. An apprentice from among the new arrivals helps her with the rough work. Yuna takes on the finer work. Hinges, locks, latches, things that require precision. Lyraine keeps the head count running like clockwork, updated every week. Every new arrival is registered within the first hour. Every dispute is resolved before sunset. Caitlin is in charge of the children's section, and 32 children. A teacher conducts lessons every morning. The children learn to read and count. Caitlin has added survival lessons of her own. How to identify an edible berry, how to start a fire, how to cross a stream. Practical skills that saved her life. Daniel has no objection. In this world, practical skills are more important than calligraphy. Serena has restructured the city's economy. Every resource is accounted for. Every expense is justified. She has introduced a system of distribution based on output. Not egalitarianism, not a meager ration. Those who work more, eat more. Those unable to work due to health issues receive a basic ration without conditions. Fair, harsh. It works. 60 days. He survived. They survived. The first goal has been achieved. 230 people have become 382. The walls stand. There is food. The water is clean. The mill is turning. The infirmary is treating patients. The smithy is forging. The children are learning. The fields are sown. He allows himself a moment to breathe. One long. Then he takes a deep breath and begins to think about the next stage, the medium-term goal. To turn Serentain into a city of 5,000 people within a year. That means a 13-fold increase. That means new houses, new workshops, new fields, new people, and new problems. Problem number 1, defense. 382 people won't protect the city from a serious attack. Serge is training a militia. 30 people, men and women, spears and shields, basic formation. But against the imperial cavalry, that's nothing. We need walls, real ones, stone ones. We need gates. We need a moat. Problem number 2, craftsmanship. The people live on basic necessities, food, water, shelter. But to grow, they need goods, nails, cloth, leather, pottery. We need craftsmen. We need a guild. Problem number 3. Politics. Serentain is still a ghost. Caldrake has forgotten about him. But rumors are spreading. Merchants carry the news. Sooner or later, the Empire will take notice. And then a single militia won't be enough. He's calling a council, for the first time. Not foremen, a council. Serge, Lyraine, Olwin, Min-seo, Serena, Yuna, Caitlin. 7 people at the table in the tower's office. Daniel lays out the plan before them. Not on paper, in words. First, walls. A stone wall around the city, 4 meters high, 1.5 meters thick. A moat in front of the wall. Construction time, 6 months. Serge nods. He understands walls. Second, the Guild of Craftsmen. Not the old guild with rules and restrictions, a new one, an open one. Anyone who masters a craft can join. Women, too. Yuna looks at him. She is silent, but her hands relax on her lap. Third, trade missions. Send people to the House of Vecrist and to the House of Malloran in the southeast. Propose trade, flour and fish in exchange for iron, stone, and livestock. Serena nods. She knows the Vecrist, knows what they want, knows what to offer. Fourth, school. Not just for children, for adults. Literacy, arithmetic, basics of construction, basics of medicine. Caitlin raises her hand and says she wants to teach survival classes for adults, too. Daniel says yes. Min-seo says he can teach 3 people basic medicine, bandaging, boiling, herbs. Daniel says yes. Lyraine remains silent throughout the meeting. Then she says one thing. She says a charter is needed, a law, rules, written down, not oral, so that everyone knows their rights and their duties, so that the right to work is not a solution to a single dispute, but a principle of the city. Daniel looks at her. She thinks like a stateswoman, not like an avenger, not like the sister of the deceased, like a person who builds. He says they will write the charter together. Lyraine nods. On the 65th day, the first refugees arrive in a large wave. Not 10 and not 20, 83 people. An entire village from the foothills. They left because an imperial detachment passed through their lands and took all their livestock and half their grain. Among them are families with children, artisans, 2 blacksmiths, a potter, a carpenter with a full set of tools, and an old man who introduces himself as a 3rd-rank ether master. Daniel hears the words ether master and freezes. Then he asks calmly, "An ether master knows how to work with veins." The old man nods. He says he can sense the veins beneath the ground. Not strongly. 3rd rank is not his first. But he can perform basic operations, direct the flow, seal a crack, connect a channel. Daniel leads him to the spot where Alvin had shown him the damaged channels in the walls. The old man places his palm on the stone. He closes his eyes. He stands there for a minute. Then he says the vein under this building is alive. Weak, damaged, but alive. The flow is there. It's just leaking into the ground through a crack in the channel. If we seal the crack, the flow will go through the channel again. Not like before, weaker, but it will flow. Daniel asks how long it will take. The old man says 2 days per canal. There are 20 canals in the city, 40 days. Daniel does the math. 40 days to restore the basic infrastructure. That means heating without firewood. That means savings on logging. That means reassigning the woodcutters to wall construction. He looks at the old man and says he'll get separate housing, double rations, and 2 assistants. The old man nods, stunned. All his life he'd been considered a 3rd-rate craftsman. Here, he's welcomed as a savior. The population is 465. The town is growing. As it grows, so do the problems. 2 new blacksmiths are challenging Yuna's place in the smithy. They are older, more experienced, and they are men. One of them comes to Daniel and speaks bluntly. A girl cannot be the head blacksmith. It's wrong. It goes against custom. Daniel looks at him. He asks calmly, has he seen the brackets in the storerooms? Has he seen the hinges on the infirmary doors? Has he seen the hooks for the lanterns in the square? The man nods. Daniel says, Yuna made all of that, in 2 months, alone, with burned hands, without help. If the new blacksmiths can do better, let them show it. The work speaks louder than usual. The man leaves. He disagrees. But arguing with the result is harder than arguing with a girl. Yuna finds out about this from Caitlin, who heard it from the guard standing nearby. She doesn't say a word to Daniel, but that evening he finds a new doorknob on the door to his office. Hand-forged, with a relief pattern, not a coat of arms, a simple design, lines like river waves. He puts the handle on the door and locks his office with it. This is his language with Yuna, through objects, without words. On the 70th day, an envoy from House Thornvale arrives, an official one, with a letter, with a seal, not a spy, an ambassador, a young man in a clean doublet riding a fine horse. He enters the city and stops. He looks around. Walls, a mill, smoke from the forges, children with books, people in the fields. His face bears the same expression Grace had. This not ruins, it's a city. The ambassador delivers Lord Varan's proposal, a trade agreement. Salt and iron from Varand in exchange for flour and fish from Serentain. Regular shipments, once every 2 weeks. Serena sits across from the ambassador and begins to bargain. It's cold. Exactly. Every figure is calculated. The ambassador is used to bargaining with men. A woman at the negotiating table throws him off balance. 2 hours later, the treaty is signed. The terms are better than what Varand offered. Serena squeezed out an additional 3 sacks of iron ore per month. Daniel signs the treaty with Adrian's ring. The seal of House Everest is hot, hot wax. The first trade alliance. The first step outward. Serentain is no longer an island. It is a hub. A small one, but a hub. On the 85th day, marauders arrive at night. Serge sounds the alarm an hour before dawn. 20 horsemen, maybe 25, moving from the forest toward the north gate. Not imperial. No banners. No uniforms. Bandits. The world is full of gangs, now that Caldrake has ruined half the houses. Former soldiers, former peasants, people who have nothing left but a sword and hunger. Daniel stands on the wall and stares into the pre-dawn darkness. His heart is pounding. Adrian's body remembers that pounding. It remembers the fear before battle. But Daniel is not a fighter. He is an organizer. His place is not on the wall, but behind it. Serge stands beside him. 30 militiamen are in position. The walls aren't high. An earthen rampart with a wooden palisade. They won't hold out long against cavalry. But Serge doesn't plan to hold out long. He plans to keep them from getting close. Daniel asks what's needed. Serge says it briefly. Fire, light, noise. Marauders attack the weak. If the city looks strong, they'll leave. Daniel turns and runs downhill. His body protests. His shoulder flares up. His knees buckle. But he runs. He rallies Caitlin's team. Not the kids. The adults from the reserves. He speaks briefly. Torches. Every single one. On the walls. Now. Barrels of oil to the gates. Boilers of water to the fire. Not to pour boiling water on their heads. For steam. Steam is visible from afar. Steam looks like machines at work. Like power. 20 minutes later, Serentain's walls are ablaze with torches. 40 fires on the palisade. Smoke from the cauldrons rises into the sky. The militia bang their spears against their shields, rhythmically, loudly, like at a parade. Daniel stands behind the wall and counts. 25 horsemen against 30 defenders on the walls in the light of the torches, with the steam and the noise. From a distance, it looks like a garrison of at least 100 men. The marauders stop 300 meters away. They stand. They watch. 5 minutes. 10. Then they turn and head north. Serge stands on the wall and watches them go. Then he climbs down and walks over to Daniel. He says the torches and smoke were a smart move. He says he wouldn't have thought of it. Daniel replies that in his former life, it was called threat perception management. Serge doesn't understand the words, but he understands the result. Not a single wound, not a single casualty. The marauders are gone. The third bridge between them is widening. In the morning, he calls a council. He says they were lucky. He says that next time, they might not be so lucky. The marauders were hungry bandits. An imperial detachment won't be scared off by torches. They need walls, real ones, stone ones. Serge unfurls the plan. He's been working on it for the past 2 weeks. A wall along the perimeter of the old city fortifications. Where the stone has survived, they'll reinforce it. Where it's been destroyed, they'll rebuild it. 4 meters high, 1.5 meters thick, a moat on the outside, 2 gates, north and south, 6 months' worth of work, 300 men working in shifts. Serena calculates the cost. We have stone, the river provides sand for the mortar, we'll burn our own lime. We have workers. There's just one problem. While people are building walls, they aren't building houses. They aren't plowing. They aren't fishing. A balance is needed. Daniel allocates resources, 100 people on the wall every day, the rest for current needs. The wall will be built more slowly, 8 months instead of 6. But the city won't stop. Serena nods. Balance. That's her word. She loves balance. On the 90th day, what he had both hoped for and feared happens. A birth. The first birth in Serentain since the siege. A young woman from among the first survivors. She gives birth in Min-seo's infirmary, on a table made to fit Min-seo's height, in the room Daniel built based on her sketches. Grana delivers the baby. Min-seo assists. The labor lasts 8 hours. It's difficult. Min-seo goes out twice to gather herbs. Her face is pale. Her hands are covered in blood. But her voice is calm. She returns and continues. At the 9th hour, a cry. Not the mother's. The baby's. A boy. Healthy. Loud. Min-seo takes him in her arms and hands him to the mother. Then she leaves the infirmary. She sits down on the steps. She closes her eyes. Daniel approaches. He sits down beside her. He is silent. Min-seo speaks softly. She says this is the first baby she's delivered indoors rather than in a field. She says it's the first time she's had light, a table, clean water, and an assistant. She says it's different, completely different. Her voice breaks on the last word. Daniel is silent. He has nothing to say. Words are superfluous here. He just sits beside her. A minute later, Min-seo stands up. She wipes her hands. She goes back to the infirmary, back to work. The news spreads through the city within an hour. A baby. Serentain's first baby. Alive. Healthy. The city isn't just surviving. The city is giving birth. In the evening, Daniel stands by the window of his office and hears someone singing. Softly. A lullaby. He doesn't know the words. The language is foreign. The melody is foreign. But a lullaby sounds the same in any world. On the 95th day, an inspection arrives from which he gains more than he expected. Serena brings the quarterly report. The first full quarterly report for the city of Serentain. 15 pages. Every category is itemized. Food, construction, medicine, defense, education, trade, demographics. 482 residents. 14 deaths in 3 months. 8 of them in the first 2 weeks. 3 from wounds, 2 from illness, 1 during childbirth, which happened before the infirmary was established. Mortality is falling every month. Birth rate, 1 child, but there are 4 more pregnancies. Trade, 2 caravans a month to Varand. A positive balance. Serentain sells more than it buys. The surplus flour went toward trade. Serena introduces the concept of a trade balance. Olwin writes down the word and circles it. A new sacred word in his book. Construction. 18 residential buildings have been restored. The wall is 30% complete. The sawmill is up and running. Primitive, manual, but it cuts boards more evenly than an axe. Education. 32 children are learning to read, write, and do arithmetic. 8 adults have signed up for evening classes. Caitlin is teaching a survival class for teenagers. Min-seo has trained 3 people in basic medicine. Daniel listens and feels pride, real pride, not for himself, for every person behind these numbers. But there is a line in the report that troubles him: air consumption. The old master has restored 4 channels. 4 buildings have received air heating. But the flow is weak, weaker than it should be. The master says that the conduit beneath the city is losing pressure. Something down below is drawing off the energy. Not up top, down below, underground. Daniel goes down to the tower's basement with the master. The master places his palms on the foundation stone. He stands there for a long time. Then he says something strange. He says the line has split. The main flow goes west, as it should, but a branch goes north, to a place where there used to be no branch. Someone dug a diversion. Someone redirected part of Serentain's ethereal flow toward Caldrake. Before the assault. This isn't war damage. It's sabotage. Daniel stands in the darkness of the basement and feels a chill. The traitor didn't just sell the map of the veins. He physically redirected the flow. He weakened the city from within long before the first imperial soldier approached the walls. This isn't espionage. It's an engineering sabotage. And for that, an ether master was needed. One of their own. The one who died during the assault. Or perhaps he didn't. Daniel goes upstairs and pulls out the scraps of letters. 3 pieces of evidence. A letter with a seal, a letter with coordinates, a diversion of the ether to the north. 3 dots. The line leads to Thornvale. But there isn't enough evidence. He puts everything back, hides it. Time will tell. For now. Walls, mills, people, bread, work. On the 120th day, the guards bring in a prisoner. Tall, blonde hair, northern accent. They found her in the forest east of the city. She wasn't hiding. She was walking openly along the road, unarmed, in an imperial uniform without insignia. Serge places her in front of Daniel in the square and says she is a Caldrakic scout. The woman stands straight. Her hands are bound behind her back. Her face is calm, professionally calm. She isn't afraid, or she knows how to hide her fear. Daniel looks at her and sees her posture. Military, precise, shoulders squared, chin level, back straight as a ruler. This isn't a peasant dressed in a uniform. This is an officer. He asks her name. She answers in an even voice. Evelyn Dries, 28 years old, Imperial Intelligence, 4th Division. Serge reaches for his sword. The 4th Division is Caldrakic's eyes, spies, saboteurs, people who enter cities ahead of the army and open the gates from the inside. Serge says she needs to be interrogated and hanged, in that order. Daniel raises his hand. Serge falls silent. Not immediately, after 3 seconds, but he falls silent. Daniel asks Evelyn why she was walking along an open road in an imperial uniform. Scouts don't travel openly. Scouts hide. She is silent for 5 seconds. Then she says her unit has been wiped out. 8 people, ambushed by partisans from the former House Hallander. She was the only survivor. She ran for 3 days, without food, without water. She didn't take off her uniform because she had nothing else to wear. She was heading for Serentain because it's the only place on the map where there might be people. She doesn't ask for mercy, doesn't ask for leniency. She states the facts. Her voice is steady, like a report. Daniel thinks. Serge waits for orders. Lyraine stands to the side and watches. Min-seo has come out of the infirmary and is watching too. 482 people, and among them is now an imperial scout. He makes a decision. He says the captive will receive food, water, and shelter, not freedom. She is forbidden to leave a certain quarter. One of Serge's men will watch her around the clock. She will not receive a weapon. She will not have access to the walls, the warehouses, or the smithy. But she will live. Serge argues, passionately. For the first time in 3 months, he is truly arguing. He says that a spy is a knife in the back. He says that she remembers everything and will leave at the first opportunity to tell Caldrake. Daniel replies that a spy who sees a thriving city is more dangerous than a dead spy. Serge doesn't understand. Daniel explains. A dead spy is silence. Caldrake will learn nothing and will continue to consider Serentain dead. But one day they'll find out, and then they'll come blindly, and strike blindly. A living spy is a channel, a controlled channel. She'll see what they want her to see, and tell Caldrake what they want him to hear. Serge is silent. He doesn't agree, but he sees the logic. Twisted, dangerous, but logic. He leaves to set up the guards. Evelyn is given a room in a dilapidated house by the southern wall, a small one, with a single window, with a guard at the door. She is given a bowl of porridge and a jug of water. She eats in silence, drinks, lies down on a wooden bench, and falls asleep. The guard reports to Serge that she slept for 14 hours. Serge frowns. Either she is truly exhausted, or she is so professional that she can sleep in captivity. Neither option pleases him. On the 3rd day of her captivity, Daniel comes to see her. He sits down on a stool across from her. He says he won't interrogate her. He won't torture her. He won't threaten her. He says she can stay silent as long as she wants. But if she gets bored, she can work. They always need hands. Evelyn looks at him. A long look. Appraising. Then she asks what kind of work he has in mind. He says walls are being built and they need people to carry stones. She smirks. She says an imperial intelligence officer is carrying stones for an enemy city. Daniel says it's not an enemy city. It's a city. Just a city where people build and eat and care for their children. And that she can be a part of that. Or she can sit in a room and stare at the ceiling. Evelyn is silent. Then she says she'll carry stones. Not because she believes him, because she's gotten tired of the ceiling in 3 days. On the 130th day, the population tops 600. Refugees are pouring in. Rumors of a living Serentain have spread throughout southern Aurelion. 10 arrive every week. 20, 30 people. Daniel turns no one away. Everyone is registered by Lyraine. Everyone gets a place. Everyone gets a job. Serena recalculates the budget every week. The balance is precarious. There are more mouths to feed than food to go around. But the mill is running. The fishermen are catching fish. The fields have yielded their first turnip harvest. Small, but the first. Turnips from the ground aren't just food. They're proof that the land is working, that the ashes have become soil, that the seeds have sprouted. Caitlin drags the children out to the field and shows them how to pull up the turnips. The children squeal with delight, dirty up to their elbows, happy. Caitlin stands there, laughing so loudly you can hear her from the other end of the field. Daniel watches from the wall and smiles. Then he sees Evelyn. She is watching too, standing by her house with a guard behind her, watching the children in the field. There is no smile on her face, no contempt, something else, a shadow of something she quickly hides. On the 145th day, Lord Vecrist makes his presence known, not personally, through intermediaries. A caravan from Verand brings news along with the salt. The imperial governor of the region, Lord Vecrist, has sent a detachment of 30 horsemen to investigate rumors of Serentain's restoration. The caravan driver says the detachment left 5 days ago. That means they have 10 days, maybe 12. Daniel calls a council. Serge is gloomy. 30 horsemen aren't marauders. They're professionals. Imperial cavalry. Armor, swords, spears. Torches won't scare them. The wall is 60% complete. The northern section is still open. The militia has grown to 70 men, but they don't stand a chance against cavalry in open terrain. Daniel thinks for 3 minutes. Everyone is silent. Then he says they won't fight. Serge jumps up. Daniel raises his hand. He says the 30 horsemen are scouts, not an assault. Vecrist doesn't know what's here. He sent them to check it out. If the squad returns with a report that the city is fortified and dangerous, Vecrist will send an army. If the squad returns with a report that the city is pathetic and not worth paying attention to, Vecrist will forget about it. We need to look just weak enough not to attract attention, and just strong enough not to provoke them. Serge says it's impossible. Daniel says it's possible. We need to hide half of what we've built, disguise the wall as ruins, remove part of the roofs, dismantle the sawmill and move it across the river, slow the mill down to a minimum, divide the people. 300 visible, 300 invisible. The invisible ones go across the river into forest and wait. The visible ones portray a pitiful settlement on the ruins, hungry, weak, no match for an attack. Serena objects. She says it's dangerous. If the imperial officer sees the trick, it's worse than an honest fight. Daniel replies that the imperial officer will see what he expects to see. He expects to see a bunch of starving peasants on the ruins. So, let's show him a bunch of starving peasants on the ruins. Lyraine is silent. Then she says she knows what broken people look like. She's seen enough. She can teach them. Daniel nods. In 3 days, the city is transformed, or rather, the opposite. New roofs are taken down and stacked across the river. The walls in visible places are covered with dirt and littered with trash. The warehouses are locked and boarded up to look empty inside. The mill is shut down. 300 people head into the forest, with tents, with food, with children. Caitlin leads them, angry, silent, but she leads. Yuna dismantles the smithy's canopy and hides the best tools in a cache by the river. The remaining 300 put on the dirtiest and most tattered clothes they have. Serena hides the ledgers in a watertight chest and buries it under the floor of the office. The imperial detachment arrives on the 11th day. 32 horsemen, the commander in fine armor. Serge stands at the gate, unarmed, in a dirty shirt, playing the part of the broken captain of a ruined city. The squad commander asks who's in charge here. Serge says Lord Adrian is wounded and can't get up, that there are 200 souls in the city, that there's no food, that the walls have collapsed, that they're neither a threat nor of interest. The Imperial looks around. Ruins, mud, emaciated people, half-ruined walls, a dead mill. He rides around the city in a circle, peeks over the walls, sees empty warehouses, a withered vegetable garden, boarded-up doors. He doesn't dismount, doesn't look for hiding places. He sees what he expected to see, a dead town. 2 hours later, the squad heads north. Serge stands at the gate and watches until the last rider disappears behind the hill. Then he turns to Daniel, who has been standing in the tower's basement the whole time, listening through Alvin. Serge says 2 words. They believe him. Daniel exhales. Then he says to start the reassembly. In a day, the city is a city again. The roofs are in place. The mill is turning. People are returning from the forest. Children are running through the streets. Caitlin yells at the guard that he opened the gate too slowly. Everything is as it was. Except for one thing. Evelyn Dries stands by her house and watches the returning people. The children, the roofs being put back in place, the mill that has started turning again. The guard tells Serge that the captive remained silent all day. She didn't try to escape. She didn't try to signal anyone. She just watched. Serge doesn't know what to do about it. Daniel does, she thinks. And what she's thinking is more dangerous to Caldrake than any sword. The 6th month. The population is 800. The city yields its first surplus of bread. Not much, 20 sacks of flour above what is needed, but it is a symbol. The city that 4 months ago counted every grain now produces more than it eats. Serena registers the surplus as a trade fund. Daniel sends a caravan to Verand. Not just 1 sack, 10, plus fish, plus lime. Serentain becomes an exporter. Verand responds with iron, with cloth, and with a question. Verand's ambassador asks if Serentain could send a man who knows how to keep such accounts. Verand has seen Serena's reports. He has seen the double entry system. He saw how the city went from 0 to a positive balance. He wants that for himself. Daniel reads the letter and smiles. He knows what this means. Not trade, influence. If Serentain starts teaching other houses its methods, those methods will become the standard, and whoever sets the standard sets the rules. He discusses it with Serena. She nods. He says he can train 2 apprentices in a month, send them to Verand as consultants. The word consultant doesn't exist in this world, Daniel explains. A person who comes and helps fix what isn't working. Serena smiles. She says that in Aurelion, such people were called spies. Daniel says the difference is that a spy hides knowledge, while a consultant shares it. Serena thinks. Then she says that this is smarter than any espionage. By the 7th month, the Ether Master had restored 12 of the 20 channels. Half the city is back on ether heating. The savings in firewood are enormous. The woodcutters who were freed up have been reassigned to building the wall. The wall is 80% complete. The northern section is closed off. The gates are in place. Oak, with iron cladding that Yuna forged herself. 4 days of work. Each strip is fitted tightly to the wood. Serge checks the gates with a battering ram. 3 men with a log. The gates hold. Serge nods. For the first time in 6 months, he looks calm. Not satisfied. Calm. For him, that's a lot. 20 men every day, 3 meters deep, 4 meters wide. The soil from the trench is used to reinforce the wall's foundation. Nothing goes to waste. Every ton of earth serves a dual purpose. Serena calculates the labor costs and says the moat amounts to 200 man-days. Daniel nods. 200 days of labor for a line of defense that will double the city's resilience. A good deal. The Guild of Craftsmen is officially founded on the 210th day. 23 craftsmen, blacksmiths, mode carpenters, masons, potters, weavers, bakers, millers, fishermen, cooper, limestone. Yuna is first on the list, not because she's the best, because she was the first hammer in the first smithy on the ashes. The 2 blacksmiths who contested her place are silent. One of them came to her yesterday and asked her to show him how she makes the swivel hinges. Yuna showed him. Silently, without malice. She just showed him. He left and made his own. Worse. But he made them. A week later, he returned and asked again. Yuna showed him again. Caitlin says it's like a school just for stubborn men. Yuna doesn't smile, but Daniel sees the corners of her lips twitch. In the 8th month, a letter arrives from House Malloran, Little Dom in the southeast, the only one that hasn't yet signed a pact with Caldrake and hasn't fallen. Lord Malloran requests a meeting. Not trade, a meeting. He wants to see the city with his own eyes. Daniel discusses it with the council. Serge says it's a trap. Serena says it's an opportunity. Lyraine says we need to show everything as it is. No pretense, no tricks. Let him see. Daniel agrees with Lyraine. He traded with Verand. With Maloran, we need to build an alliance. Alliances are built on trust, and trust begins with the truth. Lord Arden Maloran arrives with a guard of 10 men, a man in his 50s, a graying beard, tired eyes. His house is small, 2,000 men, 1 fortress, 1 ether vein. Weak. He holds on by sheer stubbornness and the fact that Caldrake hasn't gotten around to him yet. But he knows that for now, that's a short-lived reprieve. Daniel meets him personally. He leads him through the city. Shows him everything. The walls, the mill, the infirmary, the smithy, the school, the fields, the sawmill, the accounting system. Serena presents the financial report. Olwin shows him the ledgers. Min-seo takes him through the infirmary. Maloran walks in silence. He looks around. He runs his hands over the walls. He peeks into the mill. He listens to the millstone grinding the grain. He stands by the water wheel and watches the water turn the blades. Then he sits down on a rock by the river and says one word. Daniel sits down beside him. He says it's not magic, not an army, not money. People. People who know what to do and who have been allowed to do it. Maloran is silent for a long time. Then he says that his house is dying, slowly, quietly. Not from war, from the fact that the young people are leaving. The craftsmen are fleeing. The peasants see no point. His fortress stands, but inside it is empty. He asks if Serentain can help. Not with an army, not with money, with knowledge. Daniel replies that he can. He says he will send 2 men, 1 for accounting, 1 for construction, for 3 months. They will show, they will teach, they will leave, and the knowledge will remain. Maloran extends his hand. Daniel shakes it, not as lord to lord, as builder to builder. The first alliance beyond trade, the first stone in the foundation of the coalition. Evelyn Dries works on the wall every day, carries stones, mixes mortar, in silence, a guard nearby. But in 4 months of captivity, she hasn't done anything suspicious, never once tried to escape, never once approached the gates, never once asked about defenses or troop numbers. It annoys Serge. He says a spy's silence is more dangerous than their words. Daniel agrees, but he sees something else. He sees how Evelyn looks at Caitlin when she leads the children past the construction site. He sees how she lingers with her gaze on the infirmary. He sees how she stands at her window in the evening and listens as the city falls asleep. Not the noise of the camp, not the clatter of the barracks. Quiet, peaceful sounds. Conversations, laughter, a child crying, spoons clinking against bowls. A lullaby. She grew up in the Empire. In Caldrake, order is fear. Silence is submission. Discipline is punishment. But here, order is a schedule on the board and check marks next to names. Silence is exhaustion after an honest day's work. Discipline is Serena with her ledger and even voice. The first year, Serentain, 3,100 people. Daniel stands on the tower's new observation deck and doesn't recognize the city. 2 stone streets from the gate to the square. Houses with roofs of tiles they've learned to fire from local clay. The mill by the river runs around the clock. Next to it is a second one, smaller, for flax. The weaving workshop produces cloth. Coarse, but cloth. Yuna's smithy has expanded to a whole block. 4 forges, 6 blacksmiths. Yuna is the master smith. No one argues anymore. The water-powered sawmill cuts planks straighter than a human can. The school is in a stone building, 60 children in the morning, 20 adults in the evening. Caitlin teaches a separate class for teenagers. She calls it the Survival Academy. The name has stuck. Min-seo's infirmary has become a hospital. 3 rooms, 12 beds, 4 trained assistants, a pharmacy stocked with herbs gathered in the forest by 2 special teams. The mortality rate in the city is lower than in any house of Aurelion. Min-seo knows this. Serena calculated it. 4 deaths per 1,000 per year. The continental average is 12. Min-seo isn't bragging. She looks at the figure and says it could be 3. All they need are medicines that aren't available yet. Daniel says they'll be here. She nods. She believes him. The wall is finished. Full perimeter. 4 meters of stone, 1.5 meters thick. A moat. 2 gates with Yuna's iron plating. For the first time in a year, Serge looks satisfied. Not calm. Satisfied. He's training a militia of 150 men. 3 companies. Spearmen, archers, reserves. Not an army, but a serious force. Enough to repel any raid and hold out against a medium-sized unit until help arrives. If help comes. Serge says if. Daniel says when. The Maloran embassy is working. 2 of Serena's consultants went to Varand and, in 3 months, got the books in order so that Varand's treasury balanced for the first time in 10 years. The Lord of Varand sent a thank you letter and another sack of iron ore beyond the contract. The House of Maloran has adopted modular construction. Their masons build in sections, 7 by 8, just like in Serentain. Fast, cheap, reliable. Maloran sent 20 head of livestock in return, cows and goats, milk, meat, hides. Serena calculated the cost of a single cow in ether units and said that Maloran had overpaid. Daniel replied that it wasn't an overpayment, it was an investment in the relationship. Serena looked at him over her glasses and wrote a new word in her book. On the 375th day, Daniel finally receives the answer to the question that had been tormenting him since the 10th day. Serena brings a document. Not a fragment, the complete document. A trade contract between House Thornvale and Caldrake, signed 2 years before the fall of Serentain. The document made its way into the city with the last wave of refugees. A former Thornvale scribe fled and brought the archives with him. The contract is in the archives. The gist is simple. Thornvale hands over to Caldrake a complete map of the ether veins beneath Serentain and a diagram of the defensive fortifications. In exchange, Caldrake guarantees Thornvale's inviolability and hands over control of the western veins to him after the capture. Signature: Lord Cassian Thornvale. Thornvale's seal. The very same seal that was on the first scrap. Daniel sits in his office and looks at the document. His hands are steady. He had been expecting this. He had been preparing. But seeing the signature is another matter. 80,000 lives. A city in ashes. The knights are dead. Adrian's wife is missing. Adrian's sister with a burned hand. 230 people in the basement. All of this for control of the veins, for energy, for money. He folds the document, hides it. Then he calls for Lyraine, shows it to her. She reads it in silence. Her face pales. Her hands clench into fists. The burned hand in the glove creaks. She looks up, and there is a flame in her eyes. An old one, familiar. The flame of the early days when she demanded vengeance. Daniel waits. Lyraine is silent for 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then she speaks softly. She says there will be vengeance, but not with a sword. A sword cannot reach Thornvale. He is behind walls and an army, but if Serentain becomes stronger than Thornvale, if Serentain takes his trade, his craftsmen, his influence, then Thornvale will collapse on its own, without a single blow. Daniel looks at her. A year ago, this woman was screaming and demanding blood. Today, she speaks of economic strangulation. He nods. She nods. Their language, without words. On the 380th day, Daniel receives news about Adrian's wife and sister. A caravan driver from the eastern lands brings word. Two women bearing the Everest coat of arms were spotted in the city of Cormarin in the Far East, alive, under assumed names, under the protection of a local merchant. Daniel stands in his office, holding the note with this information. Adrian's wife. A woman he has never seen, but whose name is engraved on his ring. Adrian's sister. Another person from the life that existed before him. He doesn't know what he feels. Relief? Anxiety? Guilt? He lives in the body of their husband and brother. He has taken their place. He eats their bread. The second year. Serentain, the trading hub of southern Aurelion. 5,200 people. 4 stone streets. A market in the central square. 12 workshops. 2 infirmaries. A school for 120 students. Caitlin's Survival Academy has become a full-fledged educational institution. Teenagers from 3 neighboring houses come to study here. Caitlin is 21 years old. She stands before a class of 30 and teaches how to start a fire in the rain, how to find water by the moss on trees, how to bandage a wound with whatever materials are at hand. Her voice is loud, confident. She no longer shouts out of fear. She shouts because the back rows can't hear her well. The difference is enormous. Min-seo opened a medical school. 3 students in the first graduating class. In a year, there will be 10. She wrote a textbook, the first medical textbook in southern Aurelion. 120 pages. Herbs, wounds, childbirth, diseases, sanitation, boiling, quarantine. Serena has transcribed it and ordered 10 copies from a scribe. The copies will be distributed among the allied houses. Min-seo holds the first copy and is silent. Then she says that 6 years ago, in her home community, she was told that a woman cannot be a doctor. She says that now lords will read her book. Her voice is steady, but her hands press the book to her chest. Serena has become the chief economist of southern Aurelion. Not by title, in fact. Her accounting system has been adopted by 3 houses, Verand, Malorin, and House Alteran, which joined the trade union 6 months ago. Each house keeps double-entry records. Each house exchanges reports. Serena sees the economy of the entire South as a single map, where there is a surplus, where there is a deficit, where resources can be transferred. She sits in her office over the map and moves the pieces. Flour here, iron there, cloth from over there. Daniel looks at her and sees a chief operating officer. His version. The female one. More precise, more cold, more efficient. They work together every evening. Estimates, plans, calculations, sometimes late into the night, sometimes until dawn. Serena takes off her glasses and wipes the lenses with the edge of her sleeve. At that moment, she doesn't look like a treasurer, like a tired person. Daniel notices, doesn't say it out loud, but he notices. Yuna is 20 years old, Serentain's chief blacksmith, guildmaster. 10 blacksmiths work under her. She has developed a new type of bracket, not just a simple curved strip, a double one with a latch. A design found nowhere else in Aurelion. Builders say that with the new brackets, the frame goes up twice as fast. Yuna doesn't explain how she came up with it. She just brought it in and set it on Daniel's desk. He picked it up, turned it over in his hand, looked at it. She was standing by the door, waiting. He said it was the best thing he'd seen in 2 years. She nodded and left. That evening, he found another doorknob by the office door. More intricate than the first, with a relief in the shape of a mill wheel. Their language. Objects instead of words. He hung the doorknob and locked the office using only it. On the 630th day, Caldrake arrives for real. Not scouts, not marauders, the army. 1,200 men. Infantry, cavalry, siege weapons. Lord Vecrist personally at the head. He learned that Serentain was alive. Not from his own scouts, who had been deceived a year ago. From merchants, from refugees, from rumors that cannot be stopped. A city rising from the ashes, a city without a lord and a sword, a city that trades and teaches and builds, that is more dangerous than any army. An idea is more dangerous than a sword, and Vecrist has come to kill the idea. Daniel learns of the army's approach 8 days in advance. Lookouts at distant outposts, caravanners, the early warning system that Serge had been building for a year and a half. 8 days. Enough. He convenes a council, all 7 of them, plus the master of the ether, plus the senior brigade leaders. 12 people at the table. He lays out the plan. Fighting in the open is suicide. 1,200 professionals against 150 militiamen. The outcome is predictable. It's too late to hide. You can't hide 5,000 people. There's nowhere to run. So it's a siege. And a siege must be won not with swords, but with time. Serge asks how long they'll hold out. Daniel says the walls will withstand an assault. The issue isn't the walls. The issue is supplies. Serena lays out the numbers. 4 months' worth of grain. Water is unlimited. There's a well inside the walls. The river is blocked, but the well is deep. 2 months' worth of firewood. 3 weeks' worth of salted meat and fish. We can stretch it to 2 months if we cut back on portions. Daniel nods. Then he says the most important thing. The army needs fodder. 1,200 men and 300 horses eat more than 5,000 townspeople beyond the walls. Because an army in the field doesn't produce anything. It only consumes. If we cut off its supplies, it will last 2 weeks, 3 at most. Then famine will set in. Then murmuring will begin. Then Vecrist will leave because nobody needs a dead army. Cut off the supplies. How? Serge asks. Daniel unfolds a second map. Beneath the city lies a network of tunnels. Old ones, etheric ones. Channels that once carried energy are now dry and empty. The Ether Master has explored them. The tunnels run south and east. Exits lie beyond any siege perimeter. People can be moved out through the tunnels. Small groups, 5, 10 people, at night. They emerge behind enemy lines. They burn supply wagons. They damage roads. They poison wells along the supply routes. No killing. Disrupt the logistics. An army without food is a mob in 2 weeks. Serge listens. For the first time in 2 years, he smiles. A predatory smile, but a smile. He says it can be done. We need volunteers, fast, quiet, who know the terrain. Caitlin raises her hand. She says she knows every trail within a 20-kilometer radius, that her students know them too. Daniel shakes his head. He says children aren't going. Caitlin says her students are 17 and 18 and have completed 2 years of survival academy. They aren't children. Daniel looks at her. She looks back, stubbornly, angrily, just like on the first day when she arrived with 8 children and yelled at the sentry. He agrees. 5 of her best, plus 10 of Serge's fighters. 3 groups, through the tunnels. The siege begins on the 638th day. Vecrist's army surrounds the city. Tents, banners, siege towers, an impressive sight. Serge stands on the wall and counts. 1,100. Slightly fewer than expected. So part of the force remained on the march, or scattered to the villages for forage. Vecrist sends a messenger, demands the city's surrender. He promises mercy, life for the citizens, a quick death for Lord Everest instead of a slow one. Generous. Daniel dictates the reply, briefly. Serentain is a free city. It does not belong to the Empire. It does not recognize Caldrake's authority. It is ready for peace negotiations. It is not ready to surrender. The messenger rides off. Vecrist reads the message. According to the sentries, he laughs. Daniel stands on the wall and looks at the camp. 1,100 men, 300 horses, dozens of tents, and not a single field, not a single garden, not a single mill. They brought their own food. When it runs out, they'll leave. The only question is when. On the third day of the siege, Serge leads the first group through the tunnels, 5 fighters, at night. They emerge 2 kilometers south of the camp. They find a cart track. They wait for dawn. When the grain wagon appears on the horizon, they set fire to the bridge over the stream, a wooden bridge. It burns quickly. The convoy gets stuck. The guards panic. The group retreats back into the tunnel. A loss for Vecrist. 1 day's worth of supplies. A trifle. But on the 5th day, a second group burns down a fodder warehouse 5 kilometers from the camp. On the 7th day, a third group sabotages 2 wells along the supply route. Vecrist begins to understand. He sends cavalry to search for the saboteurs. The cavalry searches the forest. The saboteurs are underground. On the 10th day of the siege, rations are cut in Vecrist's camp. On the 12th day, 2 horses collapse from exhaustion. On the 14th day, Vecrist sends a messenger again. Not with a demand, with a proposal. Negotiations. Daniel agrees. On the wall, neutral territory. Vecrist climbs the stairs with 2 guards, a man in his 50s, gray-haired, thin, an intelligent face, cold eyes. He looks at Daniel and says he expected to see a warrior with a sword, but instead sees a man with ink-stained fingers. Daniel replies that ink lasts longer than blood. Vecrist smirks. He says that 20 years ago he thought the same thing. Then he realized that the Empire doesn't listen to ink. The Empire listens to steel. Daniel replies that his army's steel is running out along with its rations. Vecrist is silent. He knows. His army is starving. His horses are dropping. His men are grumbling. The city behind the walls is eating hot bread. He can feel it. The smell of fresh bread wafts from the wall every morning. Daniel ordered the oven to be built by the wall on purpose. The smell of bread demoralizes a hungry army better than any weapon. The negotiations last 4 hours. The result? Vecrist leaves. Not defeated, not surrendered, gone. He takes his army and returns north. The condition: Serentain will not attack imperial territories. Caldrake will not return to Serentain for a year. Unspoken. A year of truce. Not peace, a truce. A respite. That is enough. Daniel stands on the wall and watches as 1,001 men take down their tents and leave. Serge stands beside him, silent. Then he says that this was the best battle he has ever fought, and the only one in which no one died. Daniel does not reply. He watches Vecrist ride away. Vecrist turns around as he gallops. Just once. He looks at the city, at the walls, at the smoke from the chimneys, at the mill wheel. The 3rd year, winter. Snow lies on the roofs of Serentain in a thick white layer. The city has changed beyond recognition. 7,000 people, 6 stone streets. The market is open every day. Caravans come and go. Verand, Maloran, Alteran. Even small traders from the House of Hallandar sneak across the border to buy Serentine flour and Serentine staples. The Guild of Craftsmen numbers 80 people. Yuna has developed a new alloy for tools, stronger than ordinary steel. The recipe is secret, but the tools are sold throughout the south. The Min-seo infirmary has been turned into a 30-bed hospital. Her textbook has been reprinted 20 times and is read in all the allied houses. The medical school has graduated 10 doctors, 3 left for Verand, 2 for Melaran. The rest work in Serentine. The mortality rate is 3 per 1,000, lower than anywhere else on the continent. Caitlin's school is no longer a classroom in a tent. A stone building, 3 halls, 150 students. The Academy of Survival is recognized as the best educational institution in the South. Caitlin is 22 years old. She stands before the line of graduates and says they are ready. Her voice is firm. Her eyes are dry. She is no longer the girl who yelled at the guard. She is a mentor, a teacher, a person who is listened to, not because she is loud, but because she is right. Serena has built the economic network of Southern Aurelion. 4 houses, a unified accounting system, uniform standards of weights and measures that she developed herself. The South's trade volume has tripled in a year. Every house earns more than it did before the war. Every house depends on Serentain, because Serentain is the center, not a military one, an economic one. Whoever controls trade controls everything. Serena knows this better than any general. She sits in her office over a map of trade routes. Late evening, the candle burns low. Daniel enters with 2 mugs of hot tea. He sets one in front of her. She takes it without looking. She drinks. Then she looks up. For the first time in a long while, she looks not at the numbers, but at him. She says quietly that she hasn't trusted a single lord in 2 years. She says he's the first person she's ever turned her back on and not regretted it. Daniel is silent. He sits down beside her. Serena returns to the map, but her shoulder brushes against his. Accidentally. Or perhaps not. Neither of them moves away. Adrian's wife returned 3 months ago. Lyraine Everest, 30 years old, thin, exhausted, with a scar across her left eyebrow. Next to her is Adrian's sister, Margaret, 24 years old, quieter than before the war. They stand in front of Daniel and look at him. He looks at them. Strangers' faces, familiar to the body, unfamiliar to the soul. Lyraine takes his hand. Her fingers are cold. She says he's changed, says this isn't her Adrian. Her voice is steady, no accusation, just a fact. Daniel is silent. Then he tells the truth. Not all of it, just part of it. He says the battle changed him. He says that when you die and come back, you're already a different person. He says the old Adrian died in that battle, and the one who woke up remembers but doesn't feel. Lyraine listens. Her eyes are dry. Then she nods. She says she knew, that she sensed it from the letter, that she didn't come for her husband, for the home, for the name, for Lyraine. She leaves and settles into a separate wing of the tower. They do not live as husband and wife. They live as allies. It is better than nothing. It is more honest than a lie. Lyraine stands in the hallway between them and, for the first time in 2 years, hugs her sister. For a long time, in silence. Then she lets go and goes back to her work. The census won't wait. Lord Captain Thornvale. Traitor. Daniel hasn't forgotten. Lyraine hasn't forgotten. Serena hasn't forgotten. 2 years of work. Quiet. Invisible. Serena cut off Thornvale's trade routes one by one. Not with a blockade, with competition. Serentine flour is cheaper. Serentine tools are better. Serentine healers are more skilled. Why trade with Thornvale when Serentine offers more for less? Artisans are leaving Thornvale, first one by one, then in families, then in whole workshops. They're heading south, to a city where a blacksmith sits next to a lord, where a woman can be a blacksmith and a doctor and a treasurer, where the books are kept honestly and everyone can see how much they've earned. Thornvale is emptying out, slowly, inexorably. Lord Cassian writes angry letters, demands his people back. Serena replies politely. Free people go where they want. Serentain calls no one. Serentain simply exists. And people choose. Evelyn dries. 2 years in Serentain. Her security detail was withdrawn 6 months ago. She didn't leave. Not because she has nowhere to go, because she doesn't want to. She works on a construction crew, carries stones, mixes mortar, sometimes helps Caitlin with the teenagers, teaches them orienteering. Imperial intelligence knows the territory better than any tracker. At first, Caitlin doesn't trust her. Then she sees how Evelyn explains things, patiently, calmly, without imperial rigidity. Something has changed inside this woman. Something broke and put itself back together. Not completely, not fully, but the process is underway. Daniel sees it. He doesn't rush her. One evening, Evelyn stops him on the street. She says she wants to say one thing. She says that in the Empire, she was taught that order is vertical. One at the top, everyone else below. Fear from the bottom up, orders from the top down. She believed in this for 28 years. And then she lived for 2 years in a city where order is horizontal. A board with names, check marks, roll call, numbers that everyone can see, a lord scooping porridge, a blacksmith next to the lord, and the order works, better than the imperial one. She says it shattered her world, and that she is grateful. Daniel listens, nods, says nothing. Sometimes silence means more than words. A winter night, the longest night of the year. 100 lanterns burn in Serentain's main square. Yuna forged them for 6 months. Each one is different from the others. Each one has a pattern. Rivers, ears of grain, hammers, stars. 100 lanterns. 100 lights. Snow is falling thickly. It is quiet. People are standing in the square. Many people. Thousands. They have come for the signing of the charter of the Free South, a document they have been writing for a year. Lyraine and Serena and Daniel. Every word has been carefully considered. Every clause has been discussed by the council. Freedom of trade, the right to work, the right to land through labor, equality before the law, guild standards, medical regulations, a registration system, the right of every signatory city to self-governance, a commitment to collective defense. The 4 houses have signed: Verand, Melarin, Alterin, and Serentain. 4 seals on the parchment. 4 lords, or rather, 3 lords and 1 builder in the body of a warrior. Daniel climbs the steps of the new council building. Stone, with columns, with doors on Yuna's swivel hinges. He holds a scroll. Lyraine stands to the right, upright, stern. A scarred hand without a glove. For the first time in 3 years, she has taken off her glove in public. The scars are visible. She does not hide them. Min-seo stands to the left, calm. Her hands are clean. Her hair is pulled back. Her textbook is tucked under her arm. A habit. She never parts with it. Serena stands behind her, glasses on her nose, the scroll of the charter in her hands. She hands it to Daniel. Their fingers touch for a second. Caitlin sits on the edge of the stairs. She can't sit still. She turns her head. She counts people. A scribe's habit she learned from Lyraine. Yuna stands by the lantern, the first lantern, the one she lit with her own hands. She is silent, but for the first time in public, her face isn't stony. She smiles, quietly, with just her lips, but she smiles. Evelyn stands in the crowd, not on stage, not nearby, in the crowd, among people who were her enemies 2 years ago. She looks up at Daniel. There is no hostility in her eyes, no fear. There is something she cannot name, but it is there. Snow is falling, the lights are on. Daniel unrolls the scroll. 7,000 people stand in silence. He reads the first line. The city that burned will never burn again, because we did not build it of stone, but of people. Silence. Absolute. You can hear the snowflakes landing on the stone. Then a sound. Not applause, not a shout, a tapping. Palms against palms, slow, heavy, just like back then, at the First Supper. Like a pulse. Only now there aren't 230 people, there are 7,000. The clapping grows, fills the square, rises above the rooftops. Alvin stands in the front row, holds his ledger close. The first one, the very one. He's crying. He's not ashamed. Horst stands next to the miller's apprentice. Serge stands by the wall, arms crossed. But in his eyes, for the first time in 3 years, there's no suspicion, no control. Peace. Martha stands by the stove, which is waist high. Her stove. Her bread. Her town. Daniel stands on the steps and looks at the people. Snow on his shoulders. Snow on his cloak. Snow on the Everest ring. He thinks of Daniel Hahn, of the man who fell asleep at the wheel in Oregon and never woke up, of the team he will never see, of the world left behind the cliff. Then he looks at Lyraine, at Min-seo, at Serena, at Caitlin, at Yuna, at Evelyn in the crowd, at Alvin, at Serge, at the thousands of faces in the light of 100 lanterns. This is his team, new, different, but his. He doesn't know who put him in this body. He doesn't know why, but he knows one thing. The city stands. People are alive. The bread is warm. The lanterns are lit. And snow is falling over the square. Quiet. White. Like the beginning.